Chapter 91. Games. This was the first time Professor Hammer used the boy who lived, but in such an embarrassing situation, it was even more uncomfortable than when Harry was deliberately targeted by Snape in his first potions class. As for Draco, "I'm not going," he said in horror. The unknown of the Forbidden Forest outweighed the fear of Professor Heimer. Draco looked at Harry with disgust. "I don't want to team up with this guy." He also wanted to say that he didn't want to team up with Al, and at least he wanted to follow Professor Heimer, but Al had already taken out a shiny silver shovel and waved it around, his eyes full of warning. Draco had already heard it. "As I said, Mr. Al once used this small shovel to split the podium in half. He didn't think his skull was harder than the podium." Toby's vision behind his hair also became cold. Against the backdrop of the dark Forbidden Forest behind him, he looked like a devil living deep in the Forbidden Forest. "Did I say you should choose, Malfoy?" Professor Hammer occasionally yells at students, but everyone knows that the more dangerous it is when his voice is quieter, and no student dares to disobey the Hogwarts devil in this state. Draco lowered his gaze, not daring to look at Toby again. "Let's go," Toby said calmly, walking along the winding path. Ron and Hermione looked at Harry worriedly, but their figures still gradually disappeared into the dark forest. There were only 2 people left on the spot, and they had no choice but to look at Al. Al left the path alone and got into the bushes on the other side, seemingly determined to make the 2 of them suffer. But Al was much smaller than the 2 of them. He didn't use a flying carpet, and he quickly disappeared. He could only vaguely see the stirring of the grass, leaving the 2 of them alone in the forest. It undoubtedly added to the fear in the hearts of the 2 of them, and seemed to be one of the additional punishments for them. Al, who had walked far away, was already urging them, so Malfoy had no choice but to plough the bushes as if to vent his anger in order to open up a suitable path. Harry walked not far away in silence. The conflict between him and Malfoy was irreconcilable, and he would not be so naive as to speak out at such a time. However, Harry had been consciously or unconsciously protecting the wizard's robe on his abdomen. Underneath it was his father's invisibility cloak, which was originally prepared to deal with the Forbidden Forest tonight. Now it seems that this is really a wise decision. He doesn't need to worry about Ron and Hermione. He only needs to protect himself. Maybe he can also let Mr. Al hide inside before the crisis comes. Only Malfoy. Harry turned his head and glanced at the panting Draco, but was met with a sneer. "Are you in a daze, Potter? Or do you think the Forbidden Forest is a suitable place to meet your parents?" Harry raised the shovel and rushed over. Malfoy was waiting for him. Now was the time when he needed to vent his anger. There was a rustling sound in the grass, and a black shadow suddenly jumped out, faster than the 2 people. Harry watched helplessly as the whole world began to spin, and the bushes tilted over at a rapid speed. It wasn't until his head was hit by a diagonal branch that Harry finally realized that he had been knocked down almost instantly. Followed by a feeling of dizziness, and the uncomfortable Harry started to retching. Al stood angrily on top of a tall bush, the small shovel in his hand shining with the light of the magic circle. Harry didn't need to understand the meaning of this sentence, but he immediately understood it. Mr. Al was warning them not to mess around, and they had to hurry up. He had already seen Mr. Al walking towards him in small steps. Haha. Lee endured the nausea and stood up, touched the back of his head but found no bulge. This reminded Harry of the first time they were in solitary confinement. Those wooden swords were also engraved with magic circles that would not cause harm, but would only cause them pain. It seems that Mr. Al is no easier to talk to than Professor Heimer. The Weasley twins are both liars. How could Mr. Al be so gentle during class? He even strikes much faster than Professor Hammer. Malfoy was no better off than Harry. He was also knocked down by the sudden attack and was vomiting while holding on to a peach tree. It took Harry a lot of strength not to make the same move. After only half a minute, the 2 of them were almost fine. But Malfoy's eyes when he looked at Al were already full of fear. Al narrowed his small eyes and glanced back and forth at the 2 of them. It said no more and went back into the dark bushes. But this time there was no need for it to issue any further orders. The 2 students immediately followed quickly without any delay. Fortunately, the torture instruments in Filch's office will not be used again. Direct corporal punishment is much more terrible than deducting points. Especially in front of a Niffler who can't communicate. On the other side, under the leadership of Professor Heimer, Ron and Hermione each held a small shovel and followed closely, looking back and forth nervously. But Toby seemed to deliberately add to the terrifying atmosphere in the Forbidden Forest. He kept telling a bunch of unverifiable horror stories in a low voice: the ghosts wandering deep in the woods, vampires who longed for the warm blood of children, and the omnipresent devil will always kill students who randomly break into the forbidden forest. The last fear story felt inexplicably familiar to Ron. He thought about it with a pale face, and finally thought of what happened to him in Hagrid's cabin not long after school started. Professor Heimer at that time warned them on the grounds of being a devil. It is said that the other party. There is also an extremely sharp shovel, a tool made by goblins. Later, he and Harry hurried back to school to do their homework. Looking at Hermione, who looked calm, but in fact even the shovel kept shaking, Ron deliberately comforted her that these stories were probably made up by Professor Heimer. But at the moment when the story stopped telling, Professor Heimer suddenly stopped. In front of them was a fork in the road. No matter which way it was dark and scary, as if full of unknown monsters. Ron and Hermione looked at the tall figure in front of them, who suddenly fell silent. For no apparent reason, their hearts twitched, and they always felt that something bad was going to happen. "Want to play a game?" Toby's voice became deeper and darker. He shook his wand slightly and conjured a silver shovel out of thin air, which shone coldly in the sparse moonlight. "You can choose any fork in the road, and then I'll choose another one to see if we meet somewhere." He turned his head, his hair hanging down in front of his eyes, slightly fluttered by the majestic wind, and his eyes reflected two blank faces like white paper. "You can call this game ghost hunting, or you can call it The Devil is Behind You." Chapter 92. Ron was frightened on the spot. He hurriedly chose a fork in the road and ran away. 5 seconds later, he ran back to meet Professor Heimer's increasingly frightening gaze and grabbed Hermione, who was still standing there blankly. "Run quickly!" Ron wanted to say something, but all that came out was a scream of terror. Hermione's pupils opened wider and wider. She was pulled hard by Ron twice. As her body tilted, she saw a violently burning black-red flame suddenly rising from Professor Heimer's body, and sharp eyes sprouted from her head. The horns and height suddenly pulled up, and the face turned blood like red. "Devil! It's the devil!" Hermione ran out as if she was running for her life. She let out the same scream, and she also turned against the guest, grabbing Ron with her backhand, who originally wanted to take her to escape with her, and her legs moved much faster than Ron. "It's dragging Ron away." The fallen Ron was dragged out for a long distance, and his feet left 2 long traces on the ground. They didn't know which fork in the road they entered, and they just tried to run for their lives crazily. The devil is behind them. Toby, who used the magic ball to cast the devil's illusion, picked up the small shovel that the two had dropped, and then turned the illusion of the small shovel into 2 long whips with ferocious spikes inserted upside down. Every time he waved, the whips were within reach. The heels of the two set off a large ball of flames, making a crackling sound. They were so shocked that they tried their best to speed up their pace, but they could not close the distance between them and the devil. After running across a mossy tree stump, Ron took the time to adjust his posture and wanted to run on all fours. "Why?" He finally regained his language skills and shouted in a panic, "Didn't we agree to take another fork in the road? Why is the devil still following us?" "Oh my God, Ron, what are you thinking about?" As Hermione spoke, she stopped slowly. She pretended to be calm and said, "I remembered that Harry said that he had met Professor Heimer like this in the library. The professor was deliberately scaring us, so there is no need to be afraid." Ron stopped little by little. He panted and looked at the darker figure emerging from the darkness. The devil was raising the whip in his hand again. The barbs on it looked so real that Ron could imagine the whip. "How painful it will be on your body." "Are you sure?" Ron asked with doubtful eyes, "Are you sure those are all fake? Harry never said there were weapons in the hands of the devil last time." Before Hermione could finish speaking, the whip had fallen far away again. This time the whip passed through the gap between the two faces facing each other, and landed on the soft grass in front of their eyes. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. They really felt the heat from the flames on the whip. The hanging barbs were just 1 centimeter away from scratching the bridge of their noses. Sweat condensed on Ron's forehead and the tip of Hermione's nose. They clearly felt. "I saw the entire process of the whip falling." At this moment, the fear that appeared on their faces was more real than anything else. Screams rang out one after another, and they turned around and ran away, not daring to stay any longer for fear that their noses would just disappear. Toby chased after them leisurely. The so-called blazing heat was actually a real flame. It only needed a trivial flame spell magic circle to do it. It was not difficult at all. It's just that it's hard for Ron and Hermione to see through this little trick. And even if they think it's fake, they don't dare to take the risk. Who knows what madness Professor Hammer has gone crazy about today? He can always bring surprises to the students, and more. So much fright. At this moment, they felt that no matter what Professor Heimer would do, it would not be surprising. Maybe there would be 2 brand new corpses and 2 freshly baked inheritances left in the Forbidden Forest today. Oh, no, it was. There was only 1 copy, and Ron was a pauper, and his pocket money had been spent long ago. After this idea emerged, Ron felt sad for a moment, and he couldn't help but slow down again. Fortunately, Hermione caught him in time. Now is not the time for joking. Hermione stared at Ron in disbelief, then gasped and comforted, there should be a way to find other people to help in the Forbidden Forest. I learned a spell by myself, called the Spark Charm. It shouldn't be difficult. What Hermione meant by not difficult was that it really wasn't difficult at all. Of course, the specific degree of difficulty was only for Hermione herself and not for others. Hope emerged in Ron's eyes little by little. He saw Hermione raising her wand, pointing it at the sky, and shouted, "Sparks flying!" A fiery red spark shot up into the sky, and the red light illuminated 2 faces full of hope and expectation. Suddenly, the long whip was drawn from far away, and it hit the sparks high in the tree crown accurately. It was like hitting a bludger with a bat, and it hit a long distance, but it could not get higher than the treetops. Continuously traveling between the canopy bushes, this means that neither Hagrid's hut nor Hogwarts Castle can see this spark spell. The 2 people kept their heads raised, and the expressions on their faces were all frozen. The devil Toby behind him also quickened his pace. Why don't you run any more? Are you tired? Still missing the devil? The 2 people turned around in horror and found that the devil was less than 10 meters away from them. Ah! The escape began again. Panic screams broke the tranquility in the Forbidden Forest. Hermione thought quickly and took Ron off the path, intending to hide in the dense woods. But before Ron could open his mouth to praise, a figure appeared at the other end of the thick branches, so close to them that they sat on the ground in fright. The figure looked down at them. The 2 of them had never seen such a magical creature with their own eyes, which looked like a human and a horse. Above his waist, he was a human, with red hair and beard, but below the waist, it was brown-red. The horse's shiny body has a long red tail trailing behind it. It's a horse person. Hermione remembered that she had heard Hagrid and Professor Hammer talking about centaurs in the cabin. Ron, who had a poor memory, could only open his mouth in surprise. He had only heard his brothers describe centaurs, but he had never heard of them. Never met them in person. "Sir," Hermione subconsciously asked for help, "we need help." She could only go to the doctor randomly when she got sick, but there was not much that could be done about her. The centaur's eyes were very sad. He looked behind the 2 children and saw Toby, who had escaped from the illusion, holding 2 small shovels in his hand. "Hello, Ronan," Toby greeted. Ronan sighed, his voice low and sad, "You are not welcome in the Forbidden Forest, Professor Heimer. You dug too many deep pits and then buried them again, but you will still bring harm to the forest." He walked to a chestnut tree and gently pressed his palm on the thick trunk. "I can hear the trees moaning." Hermione and Ron stared at this scene dumbfounded. They exchanged glances with each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. They actually know each other. Damn it, these 2 are in a group. Chapter 93. After learning the fact that the 2 knew each other, Hermione and Ron began to retreat quietly in tacit agreement, but were blocked by 2 small shovels thrown at them. Toby clapped his hands up and down and said, "Then you should really go find Principal Dumbledore. He allowed me to stay in the Forbidden Forest for archaeology. And I did find a lot of wealth in the process, although the inheritance of the missing person is not. It's a lot, but at least it proves that archaeology in the Forbidden Forest is a good decision, and it can also help the school complete its student list and so on." Professor Highmore began to mention the students who disappeared in the Forbidden Forest again. Hermione and Ron thought sadly, always feeling that they might become one of them. Ronan didn't speak. He turned to look at a burnt leaf, and his eyes became more melancholy. It was caused by the spark spell just now, which burned the leaf. "This is just an accident," Toby said. "In my eyes, the Forbidden Forest is a wonderful archaeological site, so why would I bear to destroy it? Tonight is just a mistake made when teaching students a lesson. As he spoke, he turned his attention to Hermione and Ron. I hope the scare tonight will make you behave in the future and not cause any more trouble. The two of them nodded like chickens pecking at rice, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Are you on patrol? Toby asked Ronan. Have you caught the murderer of the animals in the forest yet? Hermione and Ron immediately pricked their ears. Professor Heimer's question was related to the reason why they appeared in the Forbidden Forest, which was to bury the carcasses of those animals. Ronan didn't answer immediately. He stared upwards without blinking, and then sighed. It is always the innocent who suffer first. He said, this has been the case for hundreds of years, and it is still the case now. Yes. Toby said perfunctorily, let me tell you, you centaurs have lived in the Forbidden Forest for so long, have you found any clues about the murderer? Ronan looked up at the starry sky. Mars is very bright tonight. Mars? Mars again? Toby remembered that the tall house behind the mason door mentioned Mars. His exact words at that time were, Mars is very bright tonight. It will continue to be bright for the foreseeable future. What else? Toby asked with interest, wanting to get more clues from Ronan. What else was discovered? Ronan seemed not to have heard what he said and just repeated, Mars is very bright tonight, extremely bright. After Toby asked again and again several times, Ronan added, there are many secrets hidden in the Forbidden Forest. Okay. Toby knew the temperament of centaurs very well. They are the most reluctant magical creatures to come into contact with wizards, let alone help wizards. As long as you are still patrolling, it will be fine. I don't want to be attacked for no reason one day while doing archaeology. Toby asked the two of them to pick up the small shovels. They bypassed the silent Ronan and were about to continue walking deeper into the Forbidden Forest. Ronan suddenly said, Bane is also patrolling on the other side of the Forbidden Forest. Toby looked back at him without stopping. The two people behind him exchanged glances with each other, and Ron bravely asked, Professor, who is Bane? Toby stepped over a fallen tree trunk and said, Bane is also a centaur, but he has a bad temper. According to Ronan, Al will probably meet him soon. This is not good. We have had some unpleasantness before. Bane's belief in protecting the Forbidden Forest is very firm and a bit radical. He also said harsh words to Al. It's time to speed up, children, in case Al. It would be bad if you hit hard. He looked back at the two people who looked shocked. You certainly don't want to collect corpses for centaurs. Hermione and Ron didn't know what to say at all, and they ran subconsciously. It seemed that in Professor Heimer's consideration, Mr. Al would definitely not lose. And Harry, he couldn't possibly encounter anything more terrifying than the devil chasing after him, right? Unfortunately, their prayers failed to save Harry. In the trees on the other side of the Forbidden Forest, Harry and Malfoy were walking tiredly. Al would call out from somewhere in front of them from time to time to let them know where to go, but he would not let them rest. Both of them knew this very well. This was clearly Mr. Al's punishment for their previous attempt to fight. They did not dare to resist any more, for fear of being hit on the head with a shovel again, which would not be comfortable. The places where the three walked were dense bushes, which was nothing to Al, who was small in stature, but Harry and Malfoy had suffered enough, and they had given up using shovels to clear a path. There is not much strength left in the whole body. Ah! Harry heard Mr. Al's cry again. He stared at the fallen tree trunk in front of him with a sad expression. The only way to get over was to climb up. Just as Harry was hugging the tree trunk, he suddenly heard a whoosh sound, and a sharp arrow passed straight past his face and shot straight towards Al on the bushes in front of him. Snapped! Al picked up the small shovel and moved it in front of him, then swung it again and knocked the sharp arrow away, nailing it in front of Malfoy's eyes on the other side of the tree trunk. Ah! Malfoy screamed in horror. Harry saw a centaur walking out of the woods on the right. He had black hair and a black body, and looked a little rough. He was holding a curved bow and arrow in his hand. It seemed that this was the man who attacked Mr. Al. People! Ah! Al jumped on the flying carpet and shouted angrily at the opponent's sneak attack. Bane, the centaur, looked even angrier than Al. He roared angrily, "This is not the place you should come to, Sniff, you are not allowed to take another step closer to our tribe." Ah! Al pointed in a direction towards Malfoy and Harry, which seemed to indicate the place where they were originally going to arrive. Then it flew towards Bane in a menacing manner, and took out a bunch of weird stuff from its belly pocket. Things: a screaming rag doll, a bloody table knife, a candle shrouded in mist, and even a complete skull. Al put the skull on his head, and the skull's mouth immediately grinned up and down, making an intoxicating clicking sound. Bane drew his bow again and aimed his sharp arrow at the screaming rag doll, but it was also split open by the opponent with a blood-stained knife. The laughter it made was more terrifying than the skull. Harry watched helplessly as Mr. Al started fighting with Bane. Malfoy had been frightened by the sharp arrows earlier and ran away screaming. Harry also quickly climbed over the tree trunk without looking back. Ran away. All this happened so fast that Harry had no time to think what was going on. Why did Mr. Al suddenly start a fight with the centaurs? He was running wildly in the darkness, and had long been separated from Malfoy, and had strayed from his original direction. Suddenly, there was a faint sound in the darkness, and Harry subconsciously stopped, his eyes widening in horror. A hooded figure flashed out from the shadows, crawling slowly on the ground like an approaching beast. In the figure's hand was a dead fox, but he obviously found a more interesting prey than the fox. He saw Harry and floated slowly towards him. Chapter 94. Harry was frightened by the sudden turn of events. He forgot that he still had the invisibility cloak. He kept moving his hands around his body quickly, and finally found something in his pocket, the flute given to him by Hagrid, which he also prepared. Something used to make magic circle items. Harry subconsciously played the flute. Hogwarts, 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 Hogwarts. Please teach us knowledge, but not from the devil. The ancient magic circle is omnipotent and gives the devil infinite power. Harry's original idea was to use the flute to play the school song with the melody of Symphony of Destiny, but after the dirty words, he made another mistake and turned into the devil's song with the melody of Funeral March, which is Tobyheimer. Professor. Harry hoped that someone would hear his cry for help. What he longed for most was the devil in the lyrics, even Mr. Al. The figure seemed to be affected by the singing. He slowed down his pace, but then quickly picked up his speed again, and suddenly rushed towards Harry, like a dark bat. Harry wanted to scream in fear, but couldn't make any sound and fell to the ground in fear. At this moment, Harry heard the sound of horse hooves trotting behind him, and something passed over his head and rushed towards the figure. When Harry raised his head again, the hooded figure had disappeared. A centaur stood beside him. It was different from the centaur Bane he had seen before. This centaur looked younger. His hair was. It is white gold and has the body of a silver-maned horse. Are you okay? The centaur reached out to Harry, trying to help him up. Harry quickly took several steps back. Bane gave him a bad first impression, and he was even afraid of the centaur in front of him. But the centaur seemed to know what Harry was thinking, and he said, "It seems that you have already seen Bane, and he is patrolling around here. I know that Bane has a very bad temper, and some animals have died in the forest. And the new professor at Hogwarts almost broke into our tribal gathering place, and Bane inevitably overreacted. No wizard has ever been so close to us before, and this is not allowed." The centaur once again extended his hand to Harry, and this time Harry did not refuse. "Sorry," he said awkwardly. Do you know what that was just now?" The centaur didn't answer. His eyes were astonishingly blue, like light sapphires. He looked at Harry carefully, his eyes resting on the distinct and prominent scar on Harry's forehead. "You are the Potter boy," he said. "You should not be here. The forest is not very safe at this time, especially for you. Can you ride a horse? It will be faster. My name is Firenze," he added, bending his front legs and lowering his body, allowing Harry to climb onto his back. Suddenly, the sound of more horse hooves came from the other side of the clearing. Bane limped out of the grass. He looked miserable. A long gash appeared on his chest and was still seeping out. There was blood. This must have been caused in the battle just now. For the first time, Harry realized the cruelty of Mr. Al. Compared with Bane, Al's method of punishing students was completely too kind. "Firenze!" Bane roared, "What are you doing? Think you are an ordinary mule? This is the boy from the Potter family." Firenze said, "You are seriously injured and should return to the tribe for treatment as soon as possible. Moreover, I have already told you not to provoke the new professor, but you..." He just refused to listen. You should know how cruel he would be when he really started to attack, but Dumbledore was there to prevent him from. This is the mission of being a centaur. Bane roared, "Regardless of his injuries, we need to protect the forest, instead of letting the wizard drive us like you. Remember, Firenze, we swore an oath. We must not disobey God's will." Don't we see the omens shown in the movement of the planets? Firenze was so angry that he suddenly stood up on his hind legs, and Harry had to hold on to his shoulders tightly to prevent him from falling down. Have you not seen those dead animals? Firenze roared to Bane, don't you understand why it was killed? Or did the planet not reveal this secret to you? I must resist that lurking. The man in our forest, Bane. Yes, I will side with humanity if necessary. After Firenze finished speaking, he turned around lightly, Harry clung to him tightly, and they rushed deeper into the woods, leaving Bane behind. Harry had no idea what was going on. Why is Bane so angry? Harry asked, also, what was that just now? And why do you hate Professor Highmore? And Bane even didn't hesitate to fight him. Firenze slowed down and reminded Harry to lower his head and avoid the low-hanging branches, as if thinking. Finally, just as they passed through a particularly dense bush, Firenze suddenly stopped. Harry Potter, do you know how those animals died? I don't know. Harry couldn't help being surprised when he heard this strange question. I have observed the corpses of those animals. Firenze said, they were so emaciated that their lives were forcibly taken away, they were exhausted little by little, and they died in weakness and pain. There is no doubt that this is black magic, extremely evil black magic. Bane suspects that this is done by the new professor, but I know it is not him. He will not do anything against Dumbledore's ideas. He respects Dumbledore very much. Profitable. Harry looked at the back of Firenze's head, which shone with silver spots in the moonlight. But who is the murderer? Harry asked his question loudly, why can't it be done in a more ordinary way, such as a full meal? Why must it take the life of an animal? Because the murderer is also weak, ordinary eating is no longer enough to do this. He must use other lives to delay his own life so that you can drink another thing, something that can fully restore your energy. And something magical, something that makes you immortal. Mr. Potter, do you know what is hidden in the school at the moment? The Philosopher's Stone. Of course, the elixir of life. But I don't understand who. Can't you imagine who has been waiting silently for so many years, eager to make a comeback? Who is clinging to life and waiting for the opportunity? For a moment, it was as if an iron claw suddenly grabbed Harry's heart. In the rustle of the leaves in the wind, he seemed to hear again what Hagrid said on the night they first met, some people say he died. I think it's just nonsense. I'm afraid he doesn't have much humanity left in him, so it's impossible for him to die. Are you saying, Harry said in a low, hoarse voice, that it's Vatty? Harry! Harry, are you okay? Hermione and Ron ran towards them along the path. Behind them were the frightened Malfoy and the sullen Professor Hammer. Al was standing on his shoulders, not showing any signs of the previous battle. Injured? I'm fine, Harry whispered, only daring to steal a glance at the expression on Professor Hammer's face. He seemed to be on the verge of rage, his face was terrifyingly gloomy. No one said anything more. Firenze silently put Harry back on the ground. He didn't want to stay with Toby, but Toby didn't let him go and strode directly towards him. What does Mars mean? He asked directly, his tone was completely threatening, as if Firenze would not hesitate to attack him if he dared to tell riddles like Ronan again. Firenze looked at Toby calmly. War. He said, in centaur divination, Mars means war. Toby narrowed his eyes slightly, as if to judge whether Firenze had deceived him. Just when several people thought that another battle was about to take place, Toby said in an extremely calm voice, tell your leader Marjorie not to let me see Bane again. He has taken action against Al, so don't let me see him again. Firenze and Toby looked at each other, the centaurs will not accept the wizard's threat. You will. Toby said, you must accept the threat. After saying these completely unreasonable words, Toby turned around and glanced at the four students who were trembling with fear. This seemed to be the first time they had seen Professor Heimer really angry. In the past, it was just pretending. Now hurry back to the castle, your confinement is over. Toby was not in the mood to smile at them. He had just learned that something strange had happened. All the dead animal carcasses were gone, not a single one was left behind. It's like, someone didn't want them to find clues on those bodies. No matter what these clues are, they must be related to Voldemort. Chapter 95. The original confinement arrangement for the few people was to bury the carcasses of animals that died inexplicably in the Forbidden Forest, but Harry didn't know what happened to Professor Heimer, and suddenly asked them to return to the castle, and there was no need to do this anymore. But after returning to the common room, Harry told Ron and Hermione what happened in the Forbidden Forest. The two people's eyes widened in surprise. They seemed to have heard something extraordinary. The murderer of animals turned out to be Voldemort? But he is already dead. Ron said in disbelief, many people say that he is already dead, but he was defeated by you. I never thought I could defeat Voldemort. I was just a baby at that time and didn't know anything. Harry said excitedly that he could not sit down peacefully, so he walked up and down by the fire, still trembling. Voldemort was going to get the Philosopher's Stone so that he could get the elixir of life without risking killing more animals. He must have been the one who planned to steal the Philosopher's Stone in Gringotts. Who is helping Voldemort? It is impossible for him to suddenly appear in the Forbidden Forest. Don't say that name again. Ron whispered in horror, as if he was worried that Voldemort would hear him. Harry didn't listen to him. Fieren saved me, he shouldn't have done this. Bane was very angry. Said that this would disturb the things predicted by the stars of destiny. The stars must have shown. Voldemort is coming back. Bane thinks Firenze should let Voldemort kill me. I guess that's in the stars too. Can you please stop saying that name? Ron said in a low voice. So now I can only wait for Voldemort to steal the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry continued with great excitement, and then Voldemort will come here and kill me. Well, I think Bane will. It's time to be happy. Hermione looked very scared, but she still tried to find words to comfort Harry. Harry, everyone said that the only person that you know who is afraid of is Dumbledore. With Dumbledore here, you know who will not hurt you even a hair. Besides, who said that what the centaur said must be correct? I think that one set sounds like fortune-telling, and Professor McGonagall said it was a very imprecise form of magic. And Hermione hesitated for a moment. She looked at Harry and Ron, believing that they had the same idea as her. Do you still want to anger Professor Hamo tonight? We have made the same mistake twice, and we must not mess around again. This is the first time I have seen Professor Hamo so angry. He will definitely. Meeting. Hermione stammered, and Ron said what she hadn't finished. He's going to kill us. Ron said, Professor Heimer will kill us before the mysterious man takes action. On the other side, Toby was sitting on the sofa in the ancient magic office, and Al was sitting opposite him, babbling out what happened in the Forbidden Forest, which also included the reason why Al didn't continue to talk to him. The reason why Bane fought. They stopped the battle early, otherwise Bane would definitely be injured more seriously, and there was no way to hurt Al with bows and arrows alone. The reason why it did this was because it witnessed the mysterious figure wearing a black witch robe. Judging from the timeline, this happened not long after Firenze rescued Harry. So Al. He gave up his plan to duel with Bane and pursued the figure closely. It's a pity that Al couldn't catch up with the opponent, and even the speed of the flying carpet wasn't fast enough. This was unusual. Toby knew Al's abilities very well and knew what treasures were in its belly pockets. There was no way he could not catch up with a wizard who could only run with his head down. Ah! Al said with a solemn expression, an extremely important discovery. Immediately afterwards, Toby's face became gloomy. You mean, the other party floated without using a wand? Is this the ability to fly without a wand? Wizards who want to fly can use a series of magical creations and magical animals such as broomsticks, flying carpets, and thestrals, but the true ability to fly without a wand is an extremely rare problem, especially the one that is very fast. Toby knew that Dementors had the ability to float, but even Dementors couldn't fly much faster. And the only wizard he knew who could do this was Voldemort. Voldemort is the only wizard who can fly without a wand, which was reflected in the last Wizarding War. But how is that possible? Toby frowned and said, it's impossible for the mysterious man to come back to life now, otherwise he wouldn't need the Philosopher's Stone. Unless the mysterious man gave this magic to his helper. Or, that figure is some kind of powerful dark creature, maybe it's really a vampire. The reason why Toby pays so much attention to the other party is because Al saw the fox carcass in the other party's hands, that is, the guy who stole all the animal carcasses. Toby didn't pay much attention to these corpses at first, because he was busy archaeologically in the Forbidden Forest at that time, and the key point is that he had inspected these corpses and didn't find much wrong. Although there were black magic. The traces exist, but the Forbidden Forest is inherently dangerous, and there may be dark creatures hidden somewhere. Moreover, compared with Toby's previous archaeological discoveries, these corpses are not something strange. He still remembers the characteristics of those corpses, but other than that, are there any clues that he hasn't been able to discover? By now, the entire incident has been sorted out. First, a mysterious guest appeared in the Pighead Bar. The guest used fire dragon eggs to confuse Hagrid and asked about the situation in the Forbidden Forest, focusing on the dead animals. From the beginning, these corpses were the target of the other party. The other party was worried that the corpses would be discovered, so they planned to take them away and destroy them. And this mysterious guest also did the same. Just tonight, all the animal corpses disappeared. The question now is, who stole the animal carcasses? The target of Toby's suspicion at first was Draco Malfoy, because Lucius ordered him to be placed on probation and unable to leave the school. It just so happened that during this period another mysterious guest incident occurred. That's why Toby asked Draco to be imprisoned together to observe the child. But once it involves the Forbidden Forest, it seems a bit unreasonable. Draco is not capable of appearing in the Forbidden Forest without permission. Lynn, even entering secretly is a big risk. And early the next morning, the Daily Prophet brought by an owl completely dispelled Toby's suspicion that Lucius contacted Voldemort. The reason why Lucius would put Toby on probation was just so that he would not have the opportunity to leave school and find out what happened in Egypt. Larry, the goblin supervisor who was once unceremoniously rejected by Toby, was interviewed by a female reporter named Rita Skeeter and wrote a shocking article, which was published on the front page of the newspaper. The title of the article is The Crime of Tobyheimer. Chapter 96. The Crime of Tobyheimer. Our special correspondent Rita Skeeter reports that the eccentric Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, has always dared to hire controversial teachers. In September this year, he hired Tobyheimer as teacher of Ancient Magic class. The Ancient Magic class is a newly established course. This decision has puzzled many people. It is said that there have been many explosions in this class recently, and all of them were caused by the mysterious Professor Heimer. And even has the faint intention of encouraging the students to continue. Who is he? Tobyheimer was once a member of Hogwarts, where he spent his student days, but there was no news after graduation, and he was only occasionally active in some obscure magazines. Published some articles that no one paid attention to, which are said to be related to ancient magic, although from those articles it seems that these ancient magics are extremely evil. But is it just these? Is it only these? Finally, according to insiders, the author was able to reveal the true face of this new professor, which is enough to surprise people. He is a rare Muggle-born person who has been sorted into Slytherin for many years, but don't think that this is enough. During his school days alone, he caused many horrific incidents, locking innocent classmates in wooden crates, separating their heads and having to go to St. Mungo's Hospital for treatment, using animals in the Forbidden Forest. The experience of biting a classmate, causing his body to be covered in fiery red bumps, which took a full year to be fully cured, and sending more dissatisfied people to the school hospital, all illustrate the new professors. He has a cruel heart, as if he was born a bad person. But it's not over yet. The author followed the trail of this bad guy to Gringotts in Egypt, and learned more about Tobyheimer's past from the local goblin supervisor Larry. Tobyheimer has a small reputation in the wizarding world as an archaeologist, as he calls himself, who is unwilling to give himself the title of curse breaker, or perhaps earlier, the previous Black Devil. Few people know that before he officially became a curse breaker, Tobyheimer once wandered around the dark world of various countries, specializing in some sneaky deeds, and quietly gained the title of a Black Devil. The dark wizards who opposed him disappeared quietly, and no one knew whether those people were still alive. The Black Devil, as many people call him, seems to vaguely connect him with the terror that once raged in Britain. I believe readers all know who that is, the man who must not be named. Even after getting a position in Gringotts, Tobyheimer never gave up his ambition, which made him suffer the fate of being resigned many times. He had to toss and turn, trying his best to obtain more evil, and even thrilling and terrifying power. Yes, I knew this boy would not be satisfied with his current strength and status. So said Larry, the goblin master of Gringotts in Egypt, who looked very angry and revealed the damage Tobyheimer had caused there. Ever since he entered Gringotts, he has not stopped for a moment. He threatened me to tell him all the information related to the pyramid. If I refused to do so, he would cut off my head and serve him wine. No one dares to stop him, of course not. He is the most powerful dark wizard I have ever seen. He has set a curse for me that I cannot reveal the truth to outsiders, otherwise I will die on the spot. Of course I am. I am not afraid of death, but I am more afraid that no one will know the truth, so I have to compromise. Also, do you know the Veil Bar? It is a black shop, the most powerful black shop, and the black market with the most profits. Tobyheimer was involved in the establishment process. He set an example for all local wizards. He made a lot of inexplicable rules, and everyone who opposed him was imprisoned in those pyramids. No one made it out successfully, and they probably all turned into mummies. He wants to gain power, supreme power, and is no longer satisfied with pure strength. To be honest, he reminds me of Grindelwald. The two men are exactly the same, even the history of their fortune. Resemblance. Now, look, he has set his sights on Hogwarts, think about what he will do there? No student will escape his grasp, not even the professors. The truth revealed by Larry is shocking. I believe many people thought the same thing as the author when they saw this. Wasn't there Dumbledore? Dumbledore made an unparalleled contribution during the Wizarding War. He preserved Hogwarts and did not let any students be affected by the war while they were in school. But does Dumbledore really think so? Why would he turn a blind eye to Tobyheimer's evil deeds when he was in school? Why would he suddenly recruit such a student to return to Hogwarts? Doesn't he know Tobyheimer's reputation as the Dark Devil? When Tobyheimer just took office, in the first class, he made it clear to all the students that there are no real pure-blood wizards in this world, they are all mixed blood. This once caused our ignorant new professor to get into great controversy. It is said that letters from students' parents flooded the breakfast table, but Hogwarts did not make any statement on this, but instead treated it coldly. No punishment was imposed on Tobyheimer. Once again, according to insiders, Tobyheimer's ideas coincide with Albus Dumbledore. Both of them firmly believe that the honor of the pure blood family is an unmistakable lie. They seem to be deliberately opposing the concept of pure blood existence, looking down on everyone from a superior perspective, and judging everyone's fate without any basis. There was once a person who did this, the person whose name cannot be mentioned. The other person caused too many casualties during the Wizarding War, including the boy who just entered school this year, Harry Potter's parents. I wonder how he would feel when faced with the new professor's remarks, or whether he saw a dark shadow coming towards him in the other person. After all, Dumbledore was bewitched by Tobyheimer, like a confused old man, no longer majestic, and his eyesight is dim? Or is it that Dumbledore is tired of being known as the greatest white wizard, and has made plans for this early, sending his most trusted men to travel around the world to gain power for himself, thus becoming the new White Demon King? Chapter 97. In the principal's office, Toby, who was sitting opposite Dumbledore, read the report word for word, and then shook his head with regret. Tisk, 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 Larry is really crazy. I just rejected him, and the result was, they attacked me like this and even made up facts. But I had expected this a long time ago. Goblins are not trustworthy. They are too greedy. Only gold can temporarily bind them together. Now, the gold is gone, and Larry has gone completely crazy. He threw the newspaper aside casually, but Al refused to let it go. He picked up a newspaper that was larger than himself and stood in front of him. He narrowed his small eyes and read it several times. Yet. Yeah. Al began to jump up and down angrily, shouting loudly. He poked several holes in Rita Skeeter's name, as if he wanted to tear her into pieces. Toby could only comfort him. Don't be angry, it's just that I didn't mention your name. After all, who would care so much about a Niffler? At worst, I will help you get more limelight in the future, so that you will become famous. I have a good idea right now. Al immediately calmed down and stared at Toby with bright eyes. But Dumbledore, who had been reading Transfiguration today with his head down, coughed twice on purpose, interrupting their conversation. Ahem, Toby, I have one thing to remind you. Recently, you may no longer be able to enter and leave the Forbidden Forest freely. The Centaur leader feels very uncomfortable with your threat. Unless you want to cause a war now, let the meaning. The Mars in it becomes brighter. Okay, I understand, Principal. Toby responded with a headache. I had no plans to go to the Forbidden Forest again, at least in the short term. I doubt that house didn't leave any more. Even if there is any evidence, it was destroyed thousands of years ago. He doesn't want anyone to know the truth. It would just be a waste of time to continue searching. Besides, we were not injured anyway. It was only Bane who suffered. Al immediately shook his body arrogantly, and then shook his little head hard. Unfortunately, it didn't have Toby's long hair, so it couldn't shake the short black hair on its head. Dumbledore's eyelids twitched. After seeing this, Al quickly took out his half-moon glasses, hung them on the bridge of his nose, and gave Dumbledore a big smile. "Look, Principal." Toby also followed suit and said, "Aldo likes you, you must be reluctant to punish him, right?" "I will not punish Al," Dumbledore said, staring directly at Toby, "but I just can't help but suspect that you deliberately left Al alone so that you could have an excuse to confront Bane. Do it, I know you haven't liked him for a long time. Perhaps you are planning to take this opportunity to drive out all the centaurs, so that no one can stop you from doing whatever you want in the Forbidden Forest." Toby, who was exposed, quickly lowered his head. He showed that he was very interested in the silver top. Al also walked over with a guilty conscience and stared blankly at the top spinning up and down in the air. Phineas Black in the portrait of the principal on the wall suddenly coughed loudly, but everyone heard the word he took the opportunity to say, "Ahem, deserve it." This seemed to involve everyone alive. Dumbledore got into a lot of trouble for recruiting Toby, and Toby's restless mind was discovered by the principal of his evil intentions. Seeing that the atmosphere was about to become more and more awkward, and Principal Dumbledore had not yet taken the initiative to speak, Toby had no choice but to retract his finger, and he asked cautiously, "Is there anything else, the White Devil?" "Oh, my! You mean dear Principal?" Al burst out laughing. Under Dumbledore's gaze, he quickly grabbed his mouth up and down with his paws, shaking his body. After a while, Dumbledore also laughed, which made Toby frightened and thought something was wrong somewhere. "There are many things," Dumbledore said. "First of all, you have to describe the characteristics of those animal carcasses again." Toby repeated it honestly. Even the mysterious witch-robed man was not spared. Although he had not seen the other party with his own eyes, Al had met him. Dumbledore pondered for a while. "I understand," he said, suddenly changing the subject. "We must first resolve the issue of Norbert the Fire Dragon. We cannot let him stay in Hogwarts any longer, lest Malfoy finds more people to attack us." "Excuse. I can do this," Toby immediately asked. "I know where to send Norbert. There is a fire dragon sanctuary in Egypt. You don't need to do it." Dumbledore could see at a glance that Toby's little thoughts were just to cause trouble for some people. "I will see Norbert off personally and visit an old friend again." "Old friend?" Toby asked curiously. "Who is it?" "Your former head of House Horus." Dumbledore said. "I hope he still likes pineapple preserves so much." Before Toby could continue to ask questions, Dumbledore said again, "You just need to stay at Hogwarts and don't provoke the centaurs. I don't want to see Bane suddenly appear in the Daily Prophet one day." Headlines, even though the possibility is low. What is rare is that Toby did not criticize this decision. "Yes, Headmaster," he said with a sharp mind, "I dare say that Malfoy is waiting for me to make a mistake. He must know that I have left the school probation period and can leave the school at any time. In his home. Maybe there are a lot of Aurors lurking, or maybe they are strikers who specialize in catching dark wizards. Once I really go looking for trouble with him, I might be caught red-handed, and in that case, he will have more. I condemn your excuse. I can see that he wants to kick me out of the school, but more importantly, he wants to put the conflict on you. Because he knows that I will use any means to deal with him, so he will restrain himself. But you definitely won't. He will go straight to find trouble with him. Malfoy just sees that you are easy to bully, so he always targets you." Dumbledore completely ignored Toby's secret instigation. He just said gently, "Unless you take me off the chocolate frog picture, there is nothing to worry about." Toby was bored and gave up discussing Lucius Malfoy. The same thing must be true for Rita Skeeter. The other party may be waiting for him to take the initiative, so that there will be more content. Wrote. But it doesn't matter if he can't leave the school. This can just leave Toby with an alibi and reduce his suspicion. Alleviate suspense of impending chaos in Egypt. Chapter 98. While the two people could still talk calmly, others had already made a fuss over this report. In the potions class, Goyle and Crabbe raised their hands one after another and asked Snape a bunch of questions related to Professor Hemmer, which were all written in the report. They now became Draco's mouthpiece. Draco did not dare to openly oppose Professor Hemmer, so he had to push his two followers out. Did Professor Hemmer really bully people in school? Does he really have the nickname Black Devil? Did anyone call him that in school? The corners of Snape's mouth twisted into a terrifying smile. He said meaningfully, "As far as I know, the Black Devil is a nickname that Tobyheimer came up with when he was in school. At that time, he liked others to call him that, instead of calling himself that now. Archaeologist. There is no doubt that this has greatly affected Professor Heimer's image, although in the eyes of some people, this may even seem ridiculous. Are you sure you are talking about Professor Heimer? Marcus Flint, who looked like a troll, twisted his eyebrows. Once he thought about it, he looked more like a troll. Did Professor Heimer have a good image before? Could it be that there were still people who liked him? This is simply unbelievable in the eyes of Slytherin's Quidditch captain. Is it possible for Professor Heimer's image to continue to be damaged? However, unexpectedly, Quirrell became surrounded by Professor Heimer. He sternly declared in the defense against the dark arts class that the report was complete nonsense, asking the students not to believe the content of the report. Professor Heimer cured my stutter. His face turned purple with excitement, and he kept repeating this sentence, he cured my stutter. I have never seen such a kind person. Not only the professors in the school, but also the students are constantly debating the true identity of Professor Heimer. But this article is so confusing. There are very few people who support Professor Heimer, which makes Neville's rhetoric even worse. He became less confident. No one wanted to hear him defend Professor Heimer. Professor Heimer is a good man. He loudly interrupted the murmurs of several senior students in the common room. As soon as these people saw that the speaker was Neville, they immediately dispersed quietly. Ever since the incident between Neville and Draco, after a brawl, no one wants to be rushed up and beaten by a suddenly mad Neville. Neville had already summoned up the courage to do this, which would never happen in his past experience. But all he got was silence and disgust. Many people secretly accused him of. He spoke for the professor only after being protected by Professor Heimer, but turned a blind eye when Professor Heimer deducted a large amount of points from Gryffindor twice in a row. In the eyes of these students, this was completely Professor Heimer's deliberate targeting of Gryffindor. After all, he was a Slytherin and had every reason to do so. You will always believe me, right? Neville grabbed Ron and Harry who were passing by, startling them both. Don't listen to them. Ron said after calming down, of course I believe Professor Heimer. He helped Bill with his work in Gringotts in Egypt, and we all know that Professor Heimer was not targeting Griffin at all. What Snape did is called targeting. Neville looked at Harry again, but Harry was now preoccupied with matters about the Philosopher's Stone and Voldemort, and he also acted a little hesitant. He just found an excuse and walked away with Ron. They gathered with Hermione and the three of them walked outside the castle. On the way, Ron asked curiously, what were you worried about just now? You don't really believe that report, do you? Yes, Harry. Hermione also said, if that report is true, then Snape will not be the only one who will be angered by Professor Heimer. At least Professor McGonagall didn't say anything. Harry hesitated for a while, and finally said frankly, but do you still remember, Professor Heimer said that he knew my parents? If the report is true, then the classmate Professor Heimer bullied must be Griffin. There are many houses, my parents are Gryffindors. They arrived at Hagrid's cabin. Now Norbert was 3 times as long as before, and clouds of smoke were blowing out from his nostrils. Hagrid put aside the work of guarding the hunting grounds because the Charmander made him busy. The floor was littered with blank brandy bottles and chicken feathers. When Hagrid heard what Harry said, his expression hidden under his beard suddenly became extremely wonderful. Oh, stop thinking about it, Harry. Hagrid dodged his eyes and consoled him, how could Toby bully James and Lily? But I finally know why some students were always hospitalized at that time. It turns out that this is what happened. What? Hermione said in surprise, Hagrid, are you saying that the report is true? No, it's not what you think. Hagrid quickly waved his huge palm, you have to know that Toby was very bullied when he first entered school. How could Slytherin house like a muggle? People who were born, but all of a sudden, these people started to be hospitalized one after another. Wow! Ron said with eyes shining, this is really cool. So Professor Heimer teaches students from the same house? That is, Slytherin? You should be relieved now, right? Harry. Harry secretly breathed a sigh of relief and nodded slightly. In fact, he would not have thought about this aspect originally, but the report mentioned his inner thoughts when facing Professor Heimer. This could not make Harry ignore it, and he was also troubled by it. Until now. Now, Harry finally no longer had to worry about this matter. He simply relaxed his mind and continued to ask Hagrid, what else has Hagrid done? How did Professor Hammer deal with Slater? From Lynn's students. Harry planned to wait until Draco Malfoy troubled him again, and then use the method that Professor Highmore had used on Draco to prevent him from always looking for trouble for him. But at this moment, the door of the wooden house suddenly opened. Harry was horrified to see Professor Hammer standing outside the door, staring at him coldly. A chill suddenly rose in the room, and even Norbert couldn't help but stop shouting. "It's very simple," Toby said with a gloomy face, "because I spent all my time learning magic instead of asking around for gossip, that's why they couldn't beat me. Now, do you know what to do?" The three children nodded quickly, fearing that they might be too late. "Very good." Toby then showed a satisfied smile. He walked up to Norbert in Hagrid's sight, used his wand to conjure a box, and suddenly covered the Charmander who had not regained consciousness. "No." Hagrid stopped nervously. "Toby, what are you doing?" "It's time to take Norbert away, Hagrid," Toby said, quickly dodging Hagrid's lunge. "In order not to make you too sad, that's why I didn't inform you of the news in advance, lest you do something irrational like now." He used his wand to freeze Hagrid's body as he continued to attack, and then opened the box, revealing the sleepy Charmander inside. "Say goodbye to Norbert, Hagrid." Hagrid cried with snot and tears, but this did not move the hard-hearted Toby at all. He took Norbert away without hesitation and left like a gust of wind. When Hagrid was able to resume his movements, he immediately sat on the ground and burst into tears. The three of them kept comforting Hagrid and secretly exchanged glances. Even if that report was made up, I'm afraid it also hid many terrible facts. They had no doubt that Professor Highmore would take revenge, but they didn't know how long they would have to wait. Chapter 99. Egypt. It's quiet at night. The owner of the Vale Bar, the Fairy Veach, secretly left the bar with the Vila waitress, avoiding the sight of all the guests. They came to a secluded path, and except for the two of them, Weaky didn't take anyone with him. "Boss," the Vila waitress asked nervously, "what on earth are you going to do? Does it have to be so mysterious?" Witch patiently observed the surroundings and said calmly, "Toby has encountered some troubles and needs me to help him solve them." The Vila maid was the one who entertained Toby before he left Egypt. Just like Widget, they were all familiar with each other. "Trouble? You mean the recent report?" Vila also heard about the Daily Prophet. She couldn't help laughing and said, "I didn't expect anyone to call him the Dark Devil. But is this really the trouble Toby encountered? He doesn't look like someone who cares about reputation. Honor is not worth mentioning to him." "Then you should have guessed it," Witch said. "He doesn't care about his reputation, but some things are intolerable, such as Dumbledore. You should have heard of him. That report smeared. It's not just Toby, but also Albus Dumbledore. Toby respects him very much and will not allow Dumbledore to be implicated in this way. And you also know Toby's character revenge must be taken. It is not convenient for him to solve the trouble in Egypt now. It is said that the British will have to wait for a while. But Larry, the Goblin director of Gringotts, really went too far. No, he is just a wretch who succumbed to money, no different from my stupid compatriots, short-sighted, and will live in the shadow of the wizard for the rest of his life." The Vila waitress stared at her boss as if she was meeting him for the first time. "Did I hear you correctly, boss?" Her voice became even lower. "Why does it sound like you want to overthrow the rule of wizards? Did Toby say the same? He is a wizard, not a member of the wizarding world. A second-class citizen. I've never asked him this question." Witch's voice was lower than that of Vila. "It's like I've never asked him where his disappeared opponents went. I don't need to ask, Knowing how much he hates pure-blood wizards, especially pure-blood supremacy, this at least shows that we have the same enemy. Only in the eyes of this group of glorious guys, goblins will be slaves who will always be looked down upon. You know, in the minds of those people, we goblins are no different from house elves. The same goes for you. If I hadn't taken you in, wouldn't you have joined some Quidditch team as a mascot? Are you willing to do this?" Vila shook her head quickly. She would rather be a self-reliant waitress than be treated as a clown by the audience on the court. Due to her natural beauty, she has always been repelled by this kind of performance and felt that she was everywhere. A guy with evil intentions. But it sounds really envious. Vila asked curiously, "But if Albus Dumbledore is here, can Toby's plan succeed?" "I don't know." Witch said meaningfully, "I don't know what Toby's real plan is. I only know that if a wizard is willing to cooperate with a goblin and dares to let this goblin frame another goblin, then there's nothing he can't do. To be honest, I would rather let Dumbledore live longer than really let Toby become the Dark Devil. By then, there is no guarantee what he will do. Vila doesn't care what the future will be like. She is just a waitress and doesn't need to care about so many things. She is very satisfied with her current life and just needs to do her job well under her boss. So are we going to deal with Larry? She said enthusiastically. I have long disliked him. He still scolded us in the report. This will cost us a lot of customers. I know he has no good intentions. What will we do soon? Why don't you go to Gringotts and beat him up? Which looked at the heartless Vila with a headache. That's Gringotts, let alone you. Even I don't want to get into this trouble. What if Larry accuses us of being thieves who stole the vault? Too bad, the wizards are also greedy, they will never allow such a thing to happen, and we will become everyone's enemy by then. Nothing. He laughed twice charmingly. Fortunately, Toby has already thought of a solution. The two came to a large pyramid. Through the thick stone door, they could hear something roaring inside. An unkillable mummy, that's perfect. Just when Widge was about to take action, Vila suddenly warned, Boss, someone is watching us from behind. Wiki took out a delicate dagger from his cuff, and without even looking at it, he swung it behind him, grazing someone's face with only a centimeter's distance, and nailed it into the thick stone. Who is it? Come out! He said viciously. Cursebreaker Bill Weasley swallowed nervously, walked out of the stone carefully, raised his hands and said, Hey, Witch, what a coincidence! Oh, okay, okay. He saw that Witch took out a lot of daggers, and the Vila's face also elongated, turning into a pointed bird's head with a sharp beak, and a pair of long, scale-covered wings were rising from they. Two flames sprouted from their shoulders and condensed in their palms. That's right, I saw you on the road, not far away, which was originally the location of my next exploration, but I wanted to follow you from a distance. I thought you were here to meet Tobyheimer. Yes, he helped me, and I want to thank him personally. Bill didn't tell the truth, he only hid part of the truth. He believed that Tobyheimer had spoken for him, which was what Ron told him in the letter, but he didn't trust goblins very much, especially a bar that looked like a bar. Is actually the boss of the black market. He always feels that there is something unclear about this, so he wants to follow the two of them to see what is going on. So that's it. Wedge didn't put away the dagger, he said thoughtfully, I remember you, Bill Visby, right? Toby also asked me to help look after you. How have you been doing at Gringotts lately? Not very good. Bill told the truth this time. Tobyheimer helped him write a letter to Larry at first, but then he deliberately targeted him after the Daily Prophet incident. It seemed that he was pulling the strings. There was a complete break between Lee and Tobyheimer. He also thought about having the opportunity to write a letter to Ron and ask carefully whether Professor Heimer was who he wrote in the letter. He did not blame Heimer, after all, the other person only meant well at first. Bill just thought that maybe it was. It was time to find a new job, and he was inevitably a little worried about Ron's situation. At least he didn't want Ron to be a bad example. Judging from what he knew about Ron, this might actually be possible. However, facing Bill's answer, Wiki showed a big smile. Very good, very good. He said, in this case, it is time for me to take good care of you. I believe you will not refuse, right, Visby? Bill looked at the two of them looking ready to go. This was clearly an offer that could not be refused. Why are Professor Heimer's friends so scary? Ron will be fine, right? He walked towards the two of them helplessly. It's Weasley, sir, Bill Weasley. Chapter 100. Tobyheimer is not guilty. Not long after Tobyheimer was involved in controversy, Larry, the head of Gringotts goblins in Egypt, suddenly went back on his word. He retracted all previous comments about Tobyheimer and claimed that there was actually someone else who really threatened him. It's Lucius Malfoy, I will never forget this name. Larry was lying on the hospital bed covered in bandages, but this still could not stop him from attacking the current patriarch of the Malfoy family in an angry tone. It was that shameless guy who came to me and threatened me to slander Tobyheimer. I refused to agree at first, and then he threatened the lives of my family. As for Toby, he is the best person I have ever seen. The best curse breaker who has brought countless wealth to Gringotts. How could such a person be a bad person? I tried my best to retain him before he left. That was simply the best decision I ever made. That is, summoning Toby into Gringotts where I am. What? You mean dismissal? How could any goblin fire an outstanding employee like Toby? He resigned on his own initiative. I dare say there is no goblin who doesn't want to hire him. Vale Bar? That was a complete misunderstanding. The owner of the bar, Wiki, and I are as close as brothers. I was just joking with him. What will hurt me? Well, it's because, of course it's because of Lucius Malfoy. He put a fatal curse on me, and he will kill me if he tells the truth. I was able to survive solely by virtue of the luck that Tobyheimer left me. What did you say? I was coerced by other goblin elders? This is completely wrong. It was too late for them to support me. No one dislikes Toby. He has gained countless wealth for Gringotts. He is very popular. It is extremely popular in Gringotts branches around the world. Well, yes, I plan to resign. This is just to apologize to Toby. Gringotts will never ignore such an excellent employee. We welcome him back at any time. About the punishment of Lucius? It depends on how Gringotts in the UK will handle it. It is none of my business. Okay, the interview is over, it's time for me to take medicine. Is Tobyheimer really innocent? Judging from Larry's behavior, it seems like this. He decided to slander Tobyheimer under the coercion of Lucius Malfoy. What about other Tobyheimer? Is Beaheimer's conclusion also true? Perhaps, before the facts are truly clear, some newspaper commissioners should not judge a new professor who is loved by everyone, especially the goblins of Gringotts, who all agree that Tobyheimer is a recent, the most popular wizard among goblins for hundreds of years, bringing them countless wealth. It is worth mentioning that Mr. Lucius Malfoy refused to be interviewed by this newspaper, and the real reason is unknown. Toby smiled and put down his copy of Gringotts Weekly, a newspaper founded by Gringotts and circulated among goblins. It seems that the Malfoy family is not as rich as I thought. Toby stared at the photo of Larry lying on the hospital bed in the newspaper and said to himself, otherwise, the goblins in other branches would not have stepped forward to help me put pressure on Larry. Goblins are just goblins after all. After the mummy that couldn't be killed appeared in Larry's office, he understood everything. After leading the mummy deep into the ground, he could only survive. At the same time, this news also shocked Gringotts, where Toby worked for all over the world. Toby was not only the best curse breaker in Egypt, he was the best everywhere, and he had visited ancient times. There are countless ruins, and who knows if Toby has left more behind. Almost every goblin in charge has heard Toby's stories about the deeds in ancient ruins, blood-sucking flora, densely packed bone-eating flying insects, and an army of skeletons buried deep underground. At first, few goblins would take this seriously, as all their attention was focused on the treasure Toby had obtained. Until today, everything is different. The goblins had never thought about snatching Toby away again, and they even did not hesitate to use some dark methods to eliminate all threats. But they encountered a threshold that they could not escape no matter what albustum bore. Profitable. Toby started working under Dumbledore, as if it was planned in advance, and no one dared to do anything under Dumbledore's nose. As a result, the final result was that Gringotts Weekly was inexplicably distributed in large quantities in the UK, even at any cost, just to eliminate Toby's anger. Dumbledore also read this article after returning to Hogwarts. This time he said nothing to Toby. When Toby asked about visiting Horace, Dumbledore just remained silent. He spoke as if he was deep in thought. This Gringotts Weekly report quickly spread throughout the school, and the students couldn't remember how many times this had happened to Professor Hemmer, the harsh teaching at the beginning, and then Christmas. The gift, then the change of attitude in class, the subsequent deduction of points from Gryffindor, and finally the 2 reports. They all began to become numb, and many people breathed a sigh of relief. Widely praised professors are always easier to accept than horrific deeds. No one wants to face a black devil every day, just simply. Professor Tobyheimer is difficult enough to deal with. Neville was very happy about this. He almost memorized the article and recited it to every person he met, as diligently as a bee that kept buzzing. But the Weasley twins were a little dissatisfied with this because it wasn't cool enough, so they made up a legend that was widely circulated in the school. Professor Highmore's power tentacles had reached Gringotts, since he could make greedy goblins. Let's keep our heads down, maybe the Ministry of Magic will do the same. Percy sternly criticized the 2 of them and wrote a letter to his mother. As a result, the Weasley twins were scolded by the roaring letter in the eyes of Mrs. Molly, Professor Highmore was simply a good person. Bill's letters to his family have become more frequent recently, and each one expresses his gratitude to Professor Highmore for his help. After the roaring letter turned into ashes and disappeared, the twins fled amidst the laughter around them, and the trio not far away looked at each other. "Do you think that report is true?" Harry asked. Ron blinked in confusion. "Which article are you talking about?" "There seem to be a lot of reports recently, I can hardly remember them all." "This is it." Hermione nodded angrily at the books and notes they had on hand. "The exam is in less than 4 weeks, how come you still have time to think about it? Do you hope to be taught by Professor Highmore for another year after repeating the grade?" The two people shook their heads together, and immediately lowered their heads, their eyes almost reaching the size of a standard spell. After all, even Gringotts Weekly did not deny the Dark Devil's statement. The Weasley twins' old jokes were very popular among the students, especially Harry and Ron, who believed them. Chapter 101. Finally, the exam day came. The weather was very hot, and the large classroom where the students answered questions was even more uncomfortably hot. The teacher gave them new quills specifically for exams, and they were all cursed with anti-cheating spells. There was also a practical test. Professor Flitwick asked them to go into the classroom one by one and see if they could make a pineapple tap dance across a desk. Professor McGonagall watched them turn a mouse into a snuff box. The more beautiful the box, the higher the score. The complicated exam made Harry forget all thoughts related to the Sorcerer's Stone. Although he was still worried about Voldemort, there was nothing he could do about it. The professors had already set up a mechanism to protect the Sorcerer's Stone, so there was no need for him to go there. Worry. Harry kept comforting himself like this. And even if he really found some clues, Harry would not dare to mess around. Gryffindor's score was still the last. He did not want to cause Gryffindor College to have the lowest score in the history of the school because of himself. This is all given by Professor Highmore. In order to avoid this situation, Harry even took a detour as soon as he saw Snape, not giving him any chance to deduct points from him. Even during the entire potions exam, Harry did not even raise his head once. Even though he knew that Snape was standing behind him, he could still feel Snape's breath on his neck. After finally walking out of the cold basement, Harry saw the students in the corridor discussing something excitedly. "What happened to them?" Harry asked, and Hermione shook her head in confusion. "I'll ask," Ron said and walked towards the Weasley twins. The two of them were gathering together to discuss something in low voices. They were obviously not satisfied with being interrupted by Ron, but in the end they told the students the reason for their discussion. Diggory managed it. Ron was stunned and said to the two of them, he successfully created an automatic casting wand in the ancient magic exam that just ended. "Is it all magic?" Hermione asked quickly. "That's not true, there is only a disarming spell," Ron said, "but this is also amazing. If Professor Highmore hadn't done this before, then Diggory would be the first to successfully create an automatic casting wand. Wizard. I guess it won't be long before he will be included in the research on the development of modern witchcraft, and he may even be a Hufflepuff." Hermione was stunned for a while. She hadn't been able to fully digest the fact that compared to a self-casting wand, a glass bottle that could only produce blue bellflower flames seemed nothing special. Ah! Hermione suddenly went crazy. She tore her fluffy brown hair hard like an orange cat with explosive hair, which shocked Ron and Harry. "Why?" Hermione wailed, "why was I driven away by Professor Highmore? Otherwise, at least I could have made a more powerful glass bottle." Ron reminded quietly, "Because we went to Mason Gate in violation of school rules. Have you forgotten about this?" Harry wanted to stop Ron's mouth, but it was too late. Hermione stopped for a moment and stared at Ron fiercely, as if she was considering which angle to hit him from to hurt him more. Ron immediately felt a chill spreading around him. He quickly changed the subject and said, "Oh, I have to go first. The prank sweater hasn't been completely successful yet. I'll go too." Harry followed up and said, "The melody of the flute is still wrong. Now it has become a wedding march." They didn't dare to stay with Hermione for a moment longer, and ran away as fast as they could. The last subject was ancient magic. The students stood in line at the door of the office, holding their own magic array items in their hands, like young sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Harry was also waiting anxiously. He could not complete the flute according to his original idea. The lyrics were correct, but the melody could not be changed, and it was fixed on the wedding march. 20 minutes later, the office door opened, and Professor Hammer's voice came from inside, "Harry Potter. Good luck to you," Ron said fearfully. His yield rate was even lower than Harry's. Not only could the sweater not shrink, but it would continue to get bigger. This was a complete mistake. It was rare that he was still in the mood. "Blessings, Harry." Harry clutched the flute in his hand tightly. He walked into the office cautiously and saw Professor Heimer and Al whispering something together. This surprised Harry. Professor Hammer seemed very unhappy from his expression. Could it be that Diggory's success couldn't make him feel gratified? "Tonight? Doesn't this mean that I have to rush over as soon as I finish the exam? Lucius is crazy and plans to fight me to the death. I originally thought he would calm down for a while, but no. To think that he was actually planning to cause trouble for me, even the principal didn't let me go. It seems like he really should be taught a lesson." "Ah." Al looked up and saw Harry in a daze, and reminded Toby that he was currently in the process of taking an exam. "Well." Toby looked away from the table and fell on Harry. "Mr. Potter, let's begin." Harry quickly shook what he just heard out of his mind. He took out his flute and played it for a while, and the school song with the melody of the wedding march came from it. After the assessment was over, Harry handed the flute to Professor Heimer and asked him to take a look at it. The expected goal was not completely achieved. "I remember that your original idea was Symphony of Destiny, right?" Yes, Professor." "Well." Toby pondered for a while, "That's it?" Harry silently waited for the imminent death sentence to arrive. "I can give you an E, good, and you can leave, Mr. Potter." "Sorry, Professor, I'll be there again next semester at..." Harry raised his head in surprise. "I actually passed." "Yet," Toby said, rarely smiling at Harry, "you did a pretty good job. If you had written the wedding march from the beginning, I would have given you an O, excellent. It seems that you also gifted in ancient magic. It's like, well, aren't you leaving yet, Mr. Potter? Or do you finally understand the magic of confinement? Are you planning to be imprisoned for more time?" Harry was still feeling dizzy when he left the office. After a while, Ron, who was called in, also came out. He shouted to Harry excitedly, "I passed the exam, Harry. Finally, I don't have to retake this course at..." After realizing where he was, Ron quickly hid his thoughts in his heart and did not say them out again. According to Professor Heimer, the enlarged sweater looks good, but it is not really a prank toy. The person who is put on the sweater will not wait stupidly to be tripped by the longer sweater. If, with more tricks, Ron could also get an E, good. But Ron was extremely satisfied with this, and he finally didn't need to take the course again. "I thought I was going to fail, and I was always worried that I would be given a troll T rating," Ron said without hesitation. "Now I can give my mother an explanation. She will definitely keep an eye on my ancient magic class results. Even Bill has written to me many times, asking me not to fail in this course. So slack." Toby in the office was still congratulating himself that he had not said anything wrong before. He almost said Lily's name in front of Harry. It's about their friendship, and it's also about ancient magic. It seems that Harry is more like Lily. As Toby muttered to himself, Al nodded in a pretentious manner. This was one of the few things he could do well as an assistant. Chapter 102. After all the exams were over, Quirrell witnessed Dumbledore leaving the school with Toby. His forged letters worked. Thanks to the recent reports, Quirrell took advantage of the conflict between Lucius Malfoy and Toby and informed him to go to the Ministry of Magic tonight to confirm that Lucius got more information. Evil evidence. Naturally, Dumbledore had to be brought along, because he was the principal of Hogwarts and the most powerful white wizard in the world. Only when these two people left the school could Quirrell take action on the Philosopher's Stone. Opportunity. Just tonight, the opportunity finally came. On the other side, Harry returned to the dormitory with Ron after dinner. It is finally over. Ron lay on his back on the bed and said comfortably, "There's still a week until we know the results. We should really have more fun. Do you think Professor Heimer has the same idea, so he... Will you tell us the results of the ancient magic examination in advance? Harry, what do you think?" Harry. Ron tilted his neck and looked at Harry's bed, and he was suddenly stunned. Harry is missing. At the same time, Harry was walking out of the common room passage, his heart beating rapidly, holding tightly in his hand a piece of paper that inexplicably appeared on his bedside, which said, "You know that I know your parents, Harry. I have never given up on the method of saving them, which involves the most mysterious magic resurrection from the dead. Come to the trophy display room on the 4th floor, and don't tell others. Tobyheimer Liu. Harry started running down the corridor bit by bit, and his mind was about to explode. He should have thought that Professor Heimer knew his parents, and during today's exam, Professor Heimer was mentioning the test results. It was obvious that he was hiding something and did not fully say the rest of the words. It seems that you are also talented in ancient magic, just like... Like who is it? Is it his father or his mother? The more Harry thought about it, the more likely it was that Professor Heimer was obviously not an ordinary Slytherin. He would even fight against classmates from the same house, so his friends could only be students from other houses. Gryffindor is the most suitable choice to fight against Slytherin. But why did Professor Heimer refuse to tell him at first? Was it to test him? Harry could only think in this direction, because Professor Heimer had one biggest difference from other professors: he didn't pay attention to the identity of the boy who lived from the beginning, which was extremely unusual. The moonlight shines on the corridor floor along the window. It is not yet the curfew time. This is exactly in line with Professor Heimer's style. He will not let students violate the rules without discipline. Could it be because of that mirror? Dumbledore lied to him? Harry suddenly remembered the mirror of Ariste he had encountered before. Although Principal Dumbledore had explained the mystery of the mirror to him, what if it happened? What if he can really see his parents again? Harry ran to the door of the trophy display room out of breath. He shouted excitedly, "Professor Heimer, everything you said is true." His words stopped abruptly. Quirrell, who had been waiting for a long time, pointed his wand at Harry and said aloud, "Collapse." Harry's eyes widened and he passed out completely. On the other side, in the Gryffindor common room, Hermione hurriedly asked Ron, "What do you mean Harry suddenly disappeared? Haven't you always stayed together?" "That's what it was," Ron said anxiously, "but I just lay on the bed for a short while, and when I looked up again, Harry was gone." "How is this possible?" Hermione walked back and forth in front of the fire uneasily. "He has no reason not to tell you the reason. Is there anything that Harry needs to do without telling us?" The two people thought carefully for a while. It didn't take long before their eyes suddenly widened and they looked at each other again. "Magic stone," Ron said in horror. "I thought Harry had given up. Could it be that he has been hiding it from us?" "Oops," Hermione murmured, "he couldn't help but look for you-know-who." "Do you still remember Harry's reaction after knowing that you-know-who wanted to get the Philosopher's Stone?" "Of course I remember." Ron nodded quickly, as if he suddenly remembered something. "Wait a moment." He ran back to the dormitory quickly, and ran back after a while, holding something like running water in his hand. Harry didn't even wear the invisibility cloak. This is his father's invisibility cloak. Ron no longer dared to think about what this meant. Harry went to seek revenge on the mysterious man, and he didn't even plan to come back alive. There is no way he would deliberately violate the curfew school rules at this time. Gryffindor's points will be deducted. The two looked at each other in shock again. How long has Harry been missing? It won't be long. If we chase him now, it might still be too late. Okay. Let's go find Harry now. I hope he hasn't passed the level to protect the Sorcerer's Stone. I remember there are many ways. It's not just one set by a professor. Organ. Hey, what are you talking about? A voice suddenly rang out, and Neville appeared at the entrance of the common room at some unknown time. He was holding Leaf in his hand. It seemed that his pet had wasted a lot of efforts in order to be free. Ron winked at Hermione wildly, and Neville stared at their guilty faces suspiciously. "You are planning to go out again?" he said. "I thought I heard Harry. What happened to him? Why isn't Harry here?" No. Ron quickly covered up. "Harry, he... Don't even think about fooling me!" Neville suddenly yelled, scaring Ron so much that he jumped back and almost fell over. "I knew Harry was planning to cause trouble to Gryffindor. I have been watching you secretly. Gryffindor cannot lose any more points," Neville said sternly, "the last one in the rankings. Among the 4 colleges, we are ranked last." "Oh, Neville." Hermione tried to comfort, "You don't understand, this is very important." "No. I understand very well." Neville blushed, and he mustered up the courage to interrupt. "I know you have the same idea as me, and you all feel that we must find Harry as soon as possible before the professor finds him. I want to go with you too." You didn't even hey. Ron was stunned. What did you say? Harry needs help, and I can probably understand his thinking. Neville continued, I have also experienced his feelings. He has helped our family before, and now it is my turn to help him. Ron was completely confused by what he heard. Why did Neville suddenly become so assertive? And he seemed to have plans for Harry? When did the relationship between them become so good? Hermione asked curiously, is it because of your own wand? Does it really work? Can it change the personality of the user? It was accidentally revealed that Neville owned 2 wands in total. He was always careless at first, and it was difficult not to be noticed by others, let alone avoid Harry and Ron who were in the same dormitory. I guess that's what happened. It's hard to tell. Neville walked up to Ron, is this an invisibility cloak? It's really cool. It's Harry's. Ron said, putting the invisibility cloak on the 3 of them. He sighed finally. When will it be my turn to become lucky, whether it's a wand, an invisibility cloak, or even a decent pet? At the same time, in the distant night sky, 2 thestrals were flying side by side in the clouds. Dumbledore's posture was stable, but Toby could not sit comfortably. Al huddled in his collar, his mouth opened and made a purring noise in the gust of wind. I hate thestrals, they are much worse than flying carpets. Dumbledore just smiled and said, I like these animals very much. Hagrid has trained them very well and they are very suitable for long-distance travel. At this moment, the magic ball floated out of Toby's pocket automatically, its surface emitting a faint shimmer. This is a sign that the mechanism protecting the magic stone has been invaded. Toby suddenly looked at Dumbledore. The mysterious man finally took action, but it happened tonight. No. This is not a coincidence. We seem to have been deceived, Headmaster. Dumbledore's eyes became serious little by little. Yes, Toby. He said in a complicated tone, go back quickly, go back to Hogwarts quickly. Toby heard something was wrong. What about you, Principal? Won't you go back with me? I have to go on a long journey. Dumbledore said calmly, his eyes shining behind the lenses. Albania might be a good choice. Albania? Why Albania? Toby asked in confusion. Because according to rumors, that's where Voldemort has always been hiding. Dumbledore explained, and then he disappeared with a loud noise without giving Toby any more opportunities to ask questions. Oh, my God, it's like this again. Toby had no choice but to ask the thestral to stop. He patted Al on the collar, it's time to take out the elixir. I hope it won't work. Blessing elixir does not always work, especially in the face of extremely powerful black magic. Al took out the well-preserved elixir, and together with Toby, he divided the small amount of potion into 2 parts and drank them in half. Toby finally patted the thestral beneath him, remember to return to school along the same route with your companions, and fly higher so that the muggles don't see you. Al tilted his neck and looked at Toby, yet. No, we don't need the thestral. It's a waste of time. It would be bad if we don't get back to school in time. Don't worry, Al, we've all drank the elixir, so we won't be able to help even this little bit. Toby held on to Al who was trying to escape. He took a deep breath and silently calculated the distance between this place and Hogwarts. I hate disapparating over long distances. With another burst of explosions, Toby and Al disappeared into the air and disappeared. Chapter 103. Professor Horace Slughorn is a famous potion master, so Toby asked him to help him make the elixir. In addition, there is another reason little Toby had personally experienced the magical effects of elixir when he was a student, and he knew that Slughorn had the ability to make such an advanced potion. In the past, Professor Slughorn had the habit of using brewed potions to encourage students, and to reward the students with the best performance in class. The reward he used that time was a small bottle of elixir. At that time, little Toby worked hard for this, and he even did not hesitate to secretly use the ancient magic he learned to cheat, and finally made a perfect vitality tonic, which was even better than what Lily and Snape were in the same class at the time. Later, these 2 people often laughed at him because of this incident. Professor Slughorn didn't know Toby's little trick, but Lily and Snape both knew his methods very well. It wasn't until one full moon night that Toby personally took the vial of reward and ended this unnecessary dispute. At the same time, it also led to the beginning of another deeper conflict. Decades later, in the night, the adult Toby once again looked up at the full moon in the sky. His thoughts gradually broke away from his memories, and a deep confusion couldn't help but arise in his mind. It was obviously a full moon night, but why did the elixir of blessing fail this time? Is it because Slughorn has been away from Hogwarts for so long that his knowledge and skills have begun to decline? Apparition is a method of magical travel. It allows the user to get where they want to go. This way of traveling is not pleasant. It has the feeling of having to forcefully get into a small water pipe and then pull out little by little. Not every wizard likes to apparate. Some wizards prefer to use broomsticks, flow powder, or doors. Key way to travel. Al didn't like it, so he resisted so fiercely before setting off. Toby also doesn't like apparition. He prefers flying carpets, where he can rest, eat, or even sleep under a quilt. Unfortunately, flying carpets are prohibited items in the UK, and wizards are not allowed to use flying carpets for travel because they are too easy for muggles to see. There is another reason why Toby resists apparating. It is difficult to use apparition skillfully. Short distance is fine, but if the distance is too long, it will be difficult to do it, which may lead to catastrophic consequences. Only extremely powerful. Only wizards have such strength. Toby often needs to go to various places around the world for archaeology. Ancient ruins are the kind of places that contain unknown dangers. He never uses apparition to reach the destination before doing archaeology. The risk of doing so is too high and it is not worth doing. Although Toby was about to arrive at the entrance of the Ministry of Magic at that time, and was far away from Hogwarts. But this time, with the help of the blissful elixir, Toby thought he would be foolproof. As a result, he appeared inexplicably deep in the Forbidden Forest. This was far away from the school gate where he originally expected, and it would take a lot of time to get back to the castle. And somehow, this time the blessing elixir had completely the opposite effect, just like now. Al. Toby's running posture became extremely weird, his body was stiff, his upper body seemed to be under a petrification spell, and his lower legs could not bend. He waved his empty sleeves and shouted, "Have you found my arm?" Toby is separated. This kind of dilemma that only novices would encounter actually happened to Toby. He had used apparition for so long, and no matter how unfamiliar he was, he would not be separated. The most annoying thing is that Al doesn't have anything wrong with him at all. They clearly apparat together before Al went to find his arm. He laughed at Toby for a long time, finally shaking his body. Searched everywhere. After hearing Toby's call, there was a response of awe in the distance, and Al's figure on the small flying carpet gradually appeared in the dense forest. Yet. Al's tone was unusually hesitant, and Toby asked anxiously, "What's wrong? Did you find anything? Could it be that your arm fell where it was before you left?" Two arms appearing out of thin air will definitely scare the muggles around. The Ministry of Magic doesn't know how many people's memories will be cleared for this. This will get Toby into trouble. Lucius will definitely not let go of this opportunity. Al still seemed hesitant. Toby understood, and he blinked. It can't be such a coincidence, right? About a few seconds later, a figure suddenly emerged from the woods. Black hair, black body, looking very rough, and the injury on the opponent's chest had already formed a long scar. It's Bane the Centaur. He stared at the two uninvited guests angrily, gritted his teeth and said, "Damn Tobyheimer, after threatening my people, you still dare to appear in the Forbidden Forest." Toby immediately saw an arm that Bane was holding tightly in his hand. He also saw a swollen bulge on Bane's forehead, and the elbow of his arm was also swollen. Judging from the injuries in these two locations, the incident of punching Bane with his arm probably happened only a few minutes ago. What a coincidence! Toby murmured, and the magic ball floated out of the pocket of his witch robe and landed in front of Al. "A quick fight, don't beat Bane to death. I don't have time to waste with him." After getting Toby's permission, Al no longer had to worry about being criticized by Dumbledore. It cheered, narrowed its little eyes, and stared at Bane with malicious intent. Facts have proved that the elixir of fortune still had some effect, and Al's strength was not affected. It summoned a set of ropes through the magic circle. The furious Bane got carried away for a moment, and actually pulled the rope himself while rushing forward. His head was put into the noose, and then he was tied up tightly. Al looked at Bane with disdain. He pulled his arm over and connected it to Toby's right shoulder. Then he took out a small bottle of transparent potion and poured it on the connection, making a burst of noise. There was a squeaking sound and white mist. Toby endured the discomfort and moved his shoulders a few times. He ignored Bane, whose eyes almost popped out, and limped and said to Al, "Thank God, the arm fell in the Forbidden Forest. We should look for it." The second arm. At this time, a large number of centaurs emerged from the woods one after another, led by the leader Marjorie, who was also holding a separate arm in his hand. Surprisingly, there was also a swelling on his forehead. Tobyheimer. Marjorie saw Bane, who was unable to get up at a glance, and burst out with anger in his eyes. I will never allow anyone to trample on the dignity of the centaurs. Toby was stunned. He sighed deeply and felt a surge of irritation in his heart. His hair drooped down, covering his gloomy sight. The black walnut wand was held tightly in his remaining right hand, and the magic ball floated next to his head. Al on his shoulders opened his eyes excitedly, took out a lot of strange things from his belly pocket, and finally raised the small shovel shouted excitedly. Ah! Yes, Al. It's time for the centaurs to know who allowed them to live in the Forbidden Forest. Toby threw Dumbledore's instructions to the back of his mind, his eyes narrowed slightly, and the witch robe automatically untied, revealing a strong body covered with hideous scars, no better than those shown in the school newspaper. The lower legs are poorly described. The centaur's eyes became solemn, and they swung their hooves uneasily. Just on Toby's body, deeper than the scars, are dark magic arrays, thick and dense, emitting a shimmering light. Looking from a distance, you can feel the cold evil spreading around. Just like the name Toby has long given up using. Black Devil. Invisible black flames enveloped him. Under the sight of the centaurs, Toby seemed to have turned into a real devil, more real than the fantasy constructed by the magic ball. A trace of black mist flashed in Toby's pupils. He cast a cold gaze at the centaurs and murmured in a hoarse voice. Why do people always forget this? I am even more Slytherin than Slytherin himself. Chapter 104. While an unknown battle was taking place in the Forbidden Forest, the new trio in the castle finally arrived at the corridor on the 4th floor. They quietly arrived at the door of the room on the far right. Hermione glanced at her two companions, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. With the creaking sound of the door opening, the three people immediately spotted the silver armor standing above the trapdoor and also saw the long axe held in its hand. Ron shuddered. What the hell is this? We will be hacked to death by it. Do you have any way to deal with it? Neville shook his head no matter how confident he was, but Hermione suddenly whispered, don't you think it looks a bit like Professor Highmore's collection? Look at its weapons except for the color, they are exactly the same as the ones we saw before. This long axe left a very deep impression on them, making them feel that this armor was definitely not easy to mess with from the beginning. At the same time, the armor also started to move. He placed the long axe in front of him, performed a standard knightly salute, and then looked at the three of them intently, motionless. What is it doing? Ron asked confused. I am not sure as well. Even though Hermione answered like this, she took the initiative to stand up, imitating the other person's actions in a decent manner, and carefully returned the salute. Thanks to Hermione's quick enough reaction, and thanks to Neville's timely stop of Ron's hand that wanted to pull Hermione back in just 1 second, the armor raised its long axe towards them and rushed towards them, and finally in time stopped in the middle, motionless. Ah! Hermione screamed and fell to the ground in fright. Neville was also frightened by the reaction of the armor. Ron quickly pulled the two of them up. Just as he was about to put the invisibility cloak on the three of them again, he found that the armor turned sideways and moved out of the way to the trapdoor. We have passed this? What does this mean? As soon as Ron finished talking to himself, he got angry at the two of them. What were you doing just now? At least you should inform me in advance. Am I the only normal person here? Hermione gasped and defended, I came into contact with Professor Heimer's skull collection, but I later found out that I had misunderstood them. Just now I thought the armor was similar, and I wanted to communicate with us, but the way of communication was a bit unique. Neville also followed suit and said with uncertainty, I believed in Professor Heimer and thought his collection would not kill us, but I didn't expect. Ron looked at them intently, with a look of disbelief on his face. Listen, I'm very grateful to Professor Highmore, but are you taking too many risks? Don't forget that he is still the Dark Devil. He has never denied this. You have to wake up quickly, Hagrid said. However, Professor Hamo is the only professor who has set up 2 mechanisms. The armor is only used to replace Lu Wei. Who knows what other ghosts are behind it? 2 mechanisms. Neville nodded in shock. Hermione had the same expression as Ron, disbelief. When did your memory become so good? Then why did you do so poorly on the History of Magic exam? Don't mention it. Ron said guiltily. He walked past the armor step by step. When he found that the other party really stopped moving, he bent down, pulled the ring on the trap door, and opened the trap door. Hermione and Neville also followed Ron's example and walked over. The three of them formed a circle, looking down at the unfathomable darkness inside. Can't see anything. How should this go down? Looks like I have no choice but to jump, I'll do it. Neville said boldly, showing infinite courage. It would be better if his legs weren't shaking. The two of them helped Neville slowly slide down the hole, and finally clung to the edge of the hole with only 10 fingers. He looked up at the two of them, his face becoming paler. I still have something to ask you. Neville said with trembling lips, if something happens to me, please apologize to Professor Heimer and write a letter to my grandma, telling her that I didn't. Mom and Dad are embarrassed. What? Hermione asked in surprise. But Neville had already loosened his fingers, and the cold, damp air whizzed past his ears. He fell, and then... plop! With a strange and dull impact, Neville landed on something soft. He sat up and groped around. His eyes had not yet adapted to the dim light here. He felt as if he was sitting somewhere. Plant on it. No problem. Neville shouted happily. The entrance of the hole now looked like just a spot of light the size of a postage stamp. It's a soft landing, you can jump. Wait a minute. Neville suddenly felt that something was wrong. He quickly groped for his legs and found that they were wrapped in tentacles and could not move at all. What's wrong? Ron stood by the cave entrance and asked anxiously, Neville, what's wrong with you? It's the devil's net. Neville's horrified cry came from below the cave entrance. He never thought that his favorite herbal medicine class would one day become the culprit of his murder. Do you have a fire? If there is no fire, don't come down. Don't forget to write to my grandma. Fire, fire. Ron looked at Hermione at once. Hermione was groping for her robes and took out a sparkling glass bottle from her pocket. Yes. Hermione said in surprise. This is her ancient magic class assignment, and she can create blue bellflower flames with just a simple wave of her wand. The two people immediately jumped down from the hole, passed the glass bottles to each other, used the flames in the bottles to disperse the devil's net, and finally fell to the ground safely. Ron tugged on his collar tightly, feeling that there were still tentacles there that had not been completely removed. He breathed out, I finally understand why you believe in Professor Heimer so much. Just using the magic circle saved our lives, don't you think so, Neville? By the way, the grandma you just mentioned. What happened? What happened to your parents? Neville pursed his lips tightly. Just as Hermione quietly poked Ron's arm with her finger, trying to make him stop asking questions, she suddenly heard Neville whisper, They live in St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies, which was originally the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic. The two of them have been living there for a long time since the end of the last Wizarding War, and were injured by the mysterious man. Ron was stunned, and Hermione didn't expect such an answer. Sorry, Neville. Hermione said with wet eyes, I didn't expect, I'm sorry. Ron also kept apologizing in a flustered voice. No. It's nothing. Neville quickly waved his hand and said, It's not your fault. He took a deep breath and put a bright smile on his chubby cheeks, but his words were choked up. They are almost healed, almost completely recovered. This is all due to Professor Heimer. That's why I trust him so much. Chapter 105. Harry gradually woke up from his coma. When he opened his eyes, what he saw was darkness. Where am I? He subconsciously wanted to stand up, but found that he was tightly tied with ropes and sitting on a chair, unable to move. After trying several times without success, Harry recalled with horror what had just happened. He originally left alone for Professor Heimer's note and went to the trophy display room on the 4th floor, but what he saw instead was... It was Professor Quirrell, and he was hit by the other party's magic spell, and has been unconscious until now. What the hell is going on? Just as Harry became more and more panicked, he suddenly heard a voice with a sarcastic and unfamiliar calmness in his tone. It looks like you're awake, Potter. It was Quirrell's voice. How could it be? Harry tried hard to find Quirrell, but he seemed to be blind and couldn't see anything. Where is Professor Heimer? Harry tried to suppress the fear in his heart. Where is Professor Heimer? What did you do to him? Professor Heimer. Quirrell laughed. This laugh was not his usual shrill trill, but a chilling sneer. Do you really think Heimer would be so kind to help you? Later, I inquired about some of his deeds and found that at least half of the articles in the Daily Prophet were true. You can't imagine what he had done for archaeology. Some of his bad deeds were even revealed when he was in school. It's just that few people know these things. You really don't think he will spend all his energy resurrecting your parents, do you? This is nothing compared to the ambition he pursues. Heimer is just a lunatic who has no regard for life, maybe, even your parents. The cause of death is all related to him. People involved with him will be in trouble. Otherwise, why do you think he would leave Hogwarts with only a ridiculous Niffler as a companion? Harry couldn't believe it. It couldn't be true, it couldn't be true. But you clearly thanked him. In front of all the students. No, 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 what I really wanted was for him to die, but it was a bit difficult, so I had to trick him into leaving school today. I had to do this. But one day he will kill himself. Because of his overestimating pursuit, trying to control the power that is not allowed. Yes, he will fail, Potter. As the price for causing me so much trouble, I will watch him die in front of me. Quirrell actually wants to kill Professor Highmore? What makes Harry feel even more terrifying is that Professor Heimer is actually related to the death of his parents. How is this possible? He tried to maintain his composure and focused all his attention on the current situation no matter what. This was a conspiracy, and what Harry needed to do was to get out as soon as possible. He couldn't see anything, and could only hope in his heart that Quirrell wasn't staring at him at the same time. Harry moved his arms quietly, and in order to prevent Quirrell from noticing his strangeness, he continued. He asked, why do you say that? No matter what purpose you want to achieve, you can't convince me. Of course I won't hold on to such vain hopes. Harry heard Quirrell say contemptuously this was a good sign, otherwise Quirrell would not have thought of an answer, but would have been the first to stop himself from breaking away from the rope. You are too nosy to be allowed to live anymore, Potter. You were wandering around the school on Halloween, and I knew right then that you saw me checking the mechanism of the Philosopher's Stone. What? Lua was killed by you. It was me, and it was damn Heimer that time too. He stopped my plan to let the troll into the school, so I had to piss off the big dog and let it make a mess at the Halloween dinner. Only in this way can I find. Come here to check out the agency when you get the chance. Harry felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar, with the chill rising all over his body. Only now did he finally understand what Quirrell's evil deeds were. It turned out that he was the thief of the Sorcerer's Stone, and Voldemort's means to steal the Sorcerer's Stone lay in Quirrell. Oh, it's you. Of course it's me. After all, who would doubt the stammering Quirrell? He looks as timid as a mouse and doesn't look like a thief who dares to steal the Philosopher's Stone. But you said Professor Heimer was stopping you. It's still too late for you to repent, and he won't let you go. Before Harry could finish his words, he was interrupted by Quirrell's sneer. It seems that you really don't understand anything, Potter. Did you dare to be a hero based on this? It turns out that I underestimated you. Already. Hamo suspected me, but he couldn't find anything. The master had planned everything in advance. He is more familiar with Hamo than you and I, and knows that he is a person who will not have any worries. It's not as thoughtful as Dumbledore thought, it can even be called reckless. In order to avoid any doubts about me, the master erased part of my memory, and then restored it one after another. Then nothing happened, and even Dumbledore couldn't find any clues. You are actually willing to do this? Harry said in shock, let your memory be controlled by others. There was a sudden silence all around, and Harry immediately stopped all his secret actions. Just when he thought his little thoughts were discovered by Quirrell, he heard Quirrell's voice continue to sound. This time, he clearly heard the fear. Sometimes, I find it difficult to follow my master's orders. He is a great wizard, and I am so weak. You mean the school hospital? Harry asked in surprise. You were with him on the day of the Quidditch final. He's been with me wherever I go, ever since my plan at Gringotts failed. Quirrell said calmly. He wasn't willing to let go until just to dispel suspicion. Me. But after that, I was controlled by him again in the Forbidden Forest. He knew my weaknesses, but I didn't care anymore. Hamo thought I would be grateful to him for curing my stutter. It's really ridiculous. By that time I had already given myself a more complete loyalty to my master. I was still the same person who just wanted to gain power and didn't want to be incompetent again. It is the master who gives me hope, and he will help me get everything I want. And you, Harry Potter, are part of my plan to serve. Harry found that he could suddenly see the picture again. Quirrell was standing in front of him on the right, with the purple scarf wrapped around his head. Now that scarf looked so ridiculous and ugly. Just opposite Harry, he saw a tall mirror. Harry recognized the mirror at a glance. It was the mirror of Archaeologist. Quirrell waved his wand, and the chair automatically floated directly in front of the mirror, completely reflecting Harry in it. The master is indeed right. Fortunately, he asked Mundungus to come and inquire about it in advance. Dumbledore will naturally have reservations about the last mechanism, and Highmore must also be involved in this protection. I can only see. I dedicated the magic stone to the master, but I couldn't get it out. But... Quirrell cast his cold eyes on Harry, who could be more in line with Dumbledore's wishes than the boy who lived? Even if there is a key suitable for opening the mirror, you must be the perfect one. Pieces. Upon hearing this, Harry quickly turned his head away, not even looking at the mirror of Archaeologist. But Quirrell pointed his wand at Harry, and said fiercely, "It's time to make a choice, Potter. Are you going to be a dead hero, or are you going to take out the Sorcerer's Stone and give it to me? I will dedicate it to the King of Vampires." Chapter 106. Deep in the silence and darkness of the Forbidden Forest, Toby sat on a raised rock. He pushed his long hair back to the back of his head, revealing the scars scratched by arrow blades on his cheeks, and then held the inlay tightly with his right hand. The butt end of a sharp arrow that enters the flesh and blood. "Hey, hey, hiss." Toby gritted his teeth, pulled out the arrow, and threw it aside. "Al, give me the white essence." "Ah." Toby silently treated the injury on his body and poured the white essence on the wound bit by bit. Within a few seconds, the wound began to heal slowly, leaving a medium-sized scar. He put the fresh food back into Al's belly pocket and kicked the seriously injured Bane aside. The unconscious Bane groaned in pain, but still did not wake up. The witch robe flew over and was automatically put on Toby's body, covering the dense magic circle, and the dark atmosphere disappeared immediately. The Black Devil once again transformed into a mediocre ancient magic professor. Almost no one knew how many traces there were under his clothes, and how much unimaginable pain Toby had to pay. Toby looked around except for Bane, who received extra preferential treatment. All the centaurs were piled together, forming a sizable pyramid. The leader Marjorie was located at the top of the tower. He is also the only one who can stay awake. "I can't let you." A spell flashed across and hit Marjorie, and the world finally became pure. In other ancient ruins in the past, whenever Toby had to fight a battle like this, he would start the process of searching for the ruins. And this time, Toby didn't want to be an exception. He suddenly felt that protecting the Philosopher's Stone was not that important anymore. This was a God-given opportunity. He had explored many places in the Forbidden Forest during this semester, but there was always one place that he could not forget, which he had never been able to touch. Place. Even the only time he wandered around the edge, he was discovered by the hot-tempered Bane. As a result, he formed a grudge with Al, which also led to the duel in the last confinement. Al, who was sitting on the flying carpet, put his treasures back into his belly pocket. It flew back to Toby's head, tilted its neck and called out, "Hey! No, there's no need to rush back to the castle just yet." Toby said calmly, "Let's go. It's time to go see the real Centaur's tribe." At this moment, not only was the Philosopher's Stone no longer important, but even Dumbledore's instructions were forgotten by Toby. Nothing can compare to archaeology. The centaurs were living in the Forbidden Forest. For nearly 1,000 years, they have the qualifications to be regarded as ancient magic. Toby bypassed the centaurs who could no longer stop him, passed through a dense hazel forest, walked with Al beside a narrow stream, and then detoured through several woods again. Finally, they stopped in front of a wall formed by branches. There were bursts of sounds coming from inside the wall, including people talking to each other and noises from having fun. Female centaurs and centaur cubs all lived inside, waiting for the male centaurs to return. The magic ball flew out of Toby's pocket and melted to form a silent magic circle, covering both of them, dimming their figures little by little until they were completely transparent. Compared with wizards, horse people prefer to stay close to nature and interpret nature. In this tribe, you can see greenhouses made of plants everywhere. Next to each house there is a piece of cultivated land where planters and rats. Herbs such as tail grass and fragrant mallow are specially used by centaurs in their special divination methods. A young pony lit the herbs on fire. He carefully observed the shape and signs of the smoke, and suddenly screamed, "A stranger has broken in." His divination was immediately ridiculed by his companions. "Oh, come on, you said the same thing last time, but what happened?" "We still found nothing." Yes, that time we all went to find Granny Lia. She is the most powerful prophet in the tribe, but in the end nothing happened. The pony man suddenly became aggrieved, but the result of my divination is clearly like this, and the method was not wrong. He turned his attention to a corner of the tribe, where there was also a house made of plants. The only difference was that there was a silver lime tree with a diameter of more than 10 feet growing next to the house, highlighting the extraordinary identity of the owner. Silver lime wands made from the silver lime tree are beautiful in appearance, and have properties suitable for seers and legilimens. The mysterious nature of these two roles gives the holder of the silver lime wand a high status. At the same time, Toby also walked to the door of this special room. Almost the moment he arrived, an old voice came from the house, "Please come in, guest from afar." Al suddenly became alert. Toby waved his wand and pushed the door open without touching it with his hands. He walked in. All the decorations in the house are also made of living plants. Except for the old man lying on the soft grass, she is also a centaur, but she looks very old. She is probably older than Dumbledore. Even older. Toby withdrew from the invisible state. He stood in front of the old man and said condescendingly, "I thought Margaret was your leader." "He is indeed." The old man said calmly, not surprised at all by Toby's arrival. "The centaurs need a strong enough leader to protect themselves, and Marjorie is the best." Toby declined to comment. "Then who are you?" he asked. "If this makes it easier for you to understand," the old man explained, "you can think of me as the sacrificial master of the tribe, with a higher status in the entire tribe." "Compared with the leader?" Toby asked curiously. The old man showed a smile. "I watched Marjorie grow up. He is willing to listen to my words and will never embarrass you again from now on. I can guarantee this." Unfortunately, this promise was of no value to Toby. He was more interested in the noble old man in front of him. Even in his many years of archaeology, a complete tribe of centaurs was rare. "Who was the stranger who sneaked in before?" Toby asked bluntly. The old man pondered for a while. "It's the person whose name can't even be named." The old man finally answered. "He briefly appeared in the forest and also found the centaur tribe. In order to prevent him from harming the cubs in the tribe, I had to make some exchanges with him." Seeing Toby's eyes becoming more and more dangerous, the old man still replied calmly, "If you want to know, Dumbledore also knew about this a long time ago. The last time you took the children of the castle. After he was brought to the forest, he came here to deal with the problems you caused." The old man didn't say the word threat, but Toby already understood what was going on. "This is the fate of centaurs." The old man continued, "Before Dumbledore gave us the statue of House, we didn't know much about this ancestor. We only knew the instructions he left behind. No matter how whatever the divination results are, we are not allowed to take the initiative to disclose it to the outside world. Because the continuation of the bloodline of the centaurs is more important than anything else. Once this is violated, the wizards may regard us as enemies. This will lead to the destruction of the centaurs. You should know the history and what happened to the giants and the goblins. There are only a small number of them left and they are struggling to survive. The reasons for this are very complicated. The only reason I can tell you is that magic is not eternal. I understand your philosophy, and part of your guess is right. The level of magic that wizards can use in the entire magical world has indeed decreased. The real reason is, you need to find it yourself, as it is shrouded in the fog of divination level, and even most centaurs cannot detect it." Similar to the way he came, Toby also left the centaur tribe silently. It was only then that the female centaurs quietly gathering around the old man's house began to disperse. This actually made Toby make an interesting discovery. The social structure of the centaurs is biased towards a matriarchal society, and the female centaurs are the main force that truly maintains the continuation of the centenarian bloodline. No wonder the centaurs have been able to live in the Forbidden Forest for so long. On the way back to the castle, Toby explained to Al, "It is estimated that even the previous headmasters of Hogwarts do not know the secret of female centaurs. They are the most powerful centaurs, and they will only show up when they are threatened with annihilation." Al blinked in confusion. "Yet. Are you talking about me?" Toby said nonchalantly, "It's probably because they divine something. It seems that there are still people who can understand what it means to be more Slytherin than Slytherin. In other words, even they don't want to become one of the real relics." Chapter 107. After finally getting through the Devil's Net, the new trio continued to walk along the stone corridor. They came to a room full of flying keys. Hermione was the first to discover the strange key. Its wings were drooped, like it had been caught and roughly shoved into a keyhole. Okay. Hermione got on the broom and said, it seems that Harry has been here, but we are not seekers. We must cooperate to seize this key. They discussed a plan, with Hermione and Neville pretending to drive away the key and forcing it to retreat, and finally Ron, the best at flying among the three, grabbed the key. They went back and forth several times, with Ron glued to the special key, and finally he swooped off the broom. Are you okay? Hermione quickly flew to the ground and asked concernedly. Ron endured the pain and opened his palm, and the key stayed in his hand. It seems that my talent is not bad. He joked, maybe I can be a member of the team in the future, just like Charlie. Charlie is his older brother, who led the Gryffindor Quidditch team to win the Quidditch Cup. That's not easy. Hermione said casually while pulling Ron up, Harry may be the captain by then, and it won't be easy for him to recruit you into the team. If Harry were there, he would be embarrassed to say that he couldn't be captain, and Ron would also become more exaggerated, such as taking over Harry's seeker position. It's a pity that Harry is not here, only the new member Neville is. Our Neville immediately noticed the embarrassment on Ron's face. He didn't think it was a good thing. After he became more confident, he also had the courage to speak his inner thoughts. Don't say that, Hermione. He reminded weakly. Even though Neville was very confident, he was still a little weak in front of the always strong Hermione. What's wrong? Hermione turned her head, and she also noticed something was wrong with Ron's expression. Although Ron hid it well, his ears were still red. Oh, I mean, Hermione quickly added, you and Harry have such a good relationship, he will definitely not reject you. I didn't, well, I meant to be sarcastic. Neville's weak reminder appeared again, but you are just being sarcastic. Did I? Hermione really didn't understand. Ron immediately concealed it and said no, but his reaction was really not that good, and even Hermione felt it was very strange. Sorry, Ron. Hermione said frankly. But in the face of such formal sincerity, Ron became even more embarrassed. He picked up the key and walked towards the closed door. He stuffed the key into the keyhole many times before he successfully stuffed it in. He kept talking about it. Said, it's nothing, it's really nothing. Anyway, he is used to it. His brothers are much more dazzling than him. His only sister, Ginny, has not yet entered school, but she is loved by the whole family and cannot be compared. Hermione had no choice but to ask Neville for help. How did you see it? Neville whispered, because Harry is the boy who lived. In fact, I have never understood how you can make such cool friends. Normal people can't help but compare with him. As for Ron, I always felt that his behavior just now was very similar to the first time I met Professor Heimer, but Professor Heimer is the most considerate person I have ever met. I thought about it later. I found that he wanted to help me at the time, but in order to prevent me from feeling embarrassed or sad, the professor kept talking, trying to divert my attention. Stop talking, Neville. Hermione also became sad little by little, and even her fluffy long hair became limp. Don't make me feel more regretful. It's okay to praise Professor Heimer's merits. It won't have any effect. At this time, they heard Ron, who was the first to open the door, let out a scream of terror. The two people ran over quickly. They were also frightened. They were standing next to a huge chessboard with black chess pieces in front of them. Those chess pieces were taller than them, and seemed to be carved out of something like black stone. At the other end of the room, facing them, were some white chess pieces. The faces of those towering white chess pieces have no facial features, but they don't look any friendlier than the pharaoh's coffin in the ancient magic office. They try to pass directly through the room, but are quickly blocked by white pieces. It seems we have to play chess. Ron said, I really want to know how Harry passed this level. Do you think he has never been here before? But the key to the previous room cannot be explained. Hermione reminded. The invisibility cloak was with them, and Harry couldn't become invisible in the chessboard house. Okay then. Ron suppressed the discomfort in his heart and said, listen, don't be angry, but you Hermione, you can't even beat Harry at wizard chess. As for you, N.A. Power. Stop talking. Neville quickly shook his head and said, my grandma never lets me play wizard chess. That can only be directed by me. Ron finally said. Hermione seemed to be trying to cheer him up because of her guilt just now, which made Ron even more embarrassed and quickly waved his hand and said no, no. Hermione replaced the castle, and Neville replaced the bishop. And Ron? He thought of the shining silver armor he saw in the first room. It was in line with his beautiful imagination of the future, and he also thought it was cool. I will be a knight, he said. The chess game has begun. At first, everyone felt a little unsure. They didn't know what would happen if they lost the chess game. Until the White Queen viciously knocked the other knight to the floor. The three of them watched in shock as the knight was dragged out of the chessboard and lay there face down, motionless. Neville rubbed his eyes, hoping that he was just dazzled. But when he opened his eyes again, nothing had changed. There's no other way. Ron said calmly, this is the only way you can go and eat the bishop. Hermione, go ahead. Whenever their chess pieces were captured, the white chess pieces behaved ruthlessly and showed no mercy. Soon, a large number of lifeless black chess pieces were scattered along the wall. The White Queen turned her featureless face to Ron. There's only one way. Ron whispered, I have to be eaten. No. Neville and Hermione shouted at the same time. This is chess. Ron snapped. There are always sacrifices. If I make one move, she'll eat me and you can checkmate the king, Neville. Don't you? Don't you want to find Harry? Don't worry, it's just a short-term sacrifice. Ron turned to look at the knocked-down chess pieces, they shouldn't die. He began to persuade the two of them until they reluctantly accepted. It's just a short-lived sacrifice, just a short-lived. To be honest, at this moment, Ron suddenly thought of himself. His old robes belonged to Bill, his old wand belonged to Charlie, and Scabbers the mouse was Percy's unwanted pet, not to mention his pile of old books. He seemed to be the one who was temporarily sacrificed in the Weasley family, just like he is now. But in the Burrow, this sacrifice has become a necessity. No one will praise him for it, let alone feel honored. Even if Ron makes a fuss, nothing will change. But this time it's different. This time, Ron took the initiative and chose to sacrifice. The moment he was hit by the White Queen, Ron felt that he had become a real knight, and his whole body was shining with light. He was extremely dazzling. Chapter 108 King of Vampires. After hearing this unfamiliar name, Harry was stunned. Who is the Vampire King? Could it be that Firenze's divination was wrong? Quirrell immediately noticed the astonishment on Harry's face, and he warned with threatening words, "Don't imagine that you can secretly play tricks in front of me. I don't want to repeat the previous conditions to you." "But you're talking about the Vampire King," Harry interrupted. "So what?" Quirrell said contemptuously, "You can't imagine how powerful he is and how profound his knowledge of black magic is. An ancient magic. You should listen to Heimer's lecture in class. After that, the King of Vampires is also involved in ancient magic and knows a lot of lost magical knowledge, such as the ability to fly without a wand." Harry could only see Quirrell's mouth opening and closing, but could not hear what he was saying at all. "This is different from what I thought," Harry said confused. "I thought your allegiance was to Voldemort." Just when Harry finished saying the name, Quirrell seemed to have heard some incredible horror story, and his reaction was no different from that of other wizards. They were all frightened by this name. "How dare you?" The expression on Quirrell's face was even more astonished than Harry's, and then his tone suddenly changed. "What did you say?" His tone obviously weakened a lot, and he asked in a low voice, "What is the god, the mysterious man you are talking about?" Harry suddenly felt that this method seemed to work. "It's Voldemort!" he shouted loudly, hoping to change Quirrell's mind in this way. "It was Firenze in the Forbidden Forest who told me that Voldemort has been looking for an opportunity to make a comeback. The Philosopher's Stone can make him immortal. You are doing things for Voldemort. Don't you understand what this means? Voldemort deceived you. Quirrell. You shouldn't let Voldemort control your memory. He will definitely not be grateful to you for it, because he won't even tell you his true identity. It's not too late to regret now." Harry racked his brains and tried to persuade him, "You can completely explain that you were deceived. Like me, you are also a victim. No one will blame you for this. Think about it, think about Dumbledore. He can even tolerate Professor Highmore and Snape, and these two even had a fight in the school without being dismissed. You won't have any problems. You haven't done anything yet. The Halloween accident is nothing, it didn't hurt anyone." "Sorry, Hagrid." Harry silently apologized to the heartbroken Hagrid, who was crying at that time. He could only lie like this now. Quirrell suddenly became restless. He paced back and forth in front of Harry, walking around and around, and then walked to the corner of the room from time to time, quietly muttering something to himself. But judging from the expression on Quirrell's face, it seemed that he had not received a satisfactory answer. Quirrell walked back to the chair again, and Harry stared closely at his pale face, trying to find something from it. He saw Quirrell suddenly wave his wand, and Harry's body suddenly became extremely stiff, and he could no longer move his head. Quirrell stepped aside so that Harry could see himself in the mirror of Archaeologist. "You do not understand," Quirrell murmured in a voice that Harry could barely hear, with a look of madness and morbidity on his face. Neither the King of Vampires nor Voldemort could change his decision to go to Albania. At that time, as now, he was troubled by his past experiences, which were all insults and bullying. Quirrell also stared at the mirror of Archaeologist, his tone becoming extremely calm. "Now, I should call him the Dark Lord." After winning the chess game in the chessboard room, Neville and Hermione looked back sadly at Ron for the last time, then rushed through the door and walked forward along the next corridor. The two of them didn't speak any more along the way, they just wanted to get Harry back as soon as possible. And deep in their hearts, there was a vague feeling of something bad. When inside the chessboard house, they can completely suppress this feeling. It wasn't until they opened the next room and saw the giant monster that had its head thrown down that it finally completely erupted. Someone broke in and wanted to steal the Philosopher's Stone. Harry might be in their hands too. They covered their noses and looked at each other, each seeing this meaning in each other's eyes. The two of them bypassed the giant monster's huge body, quickly ran to the other end of the room, and opened the next door. As soon as they crossed the threshold, a flame rose up behind them and sealed the door. The flame was unusual, it was purple. At the same time, black flames also burst out from the door leading to the front. They were trapped. In the middle. There is only one table in the room, with 7 bottles of different shapes arranged on it. "Look." Hermione grabbed a roll of parchment placed next to the bottle. She asked Neville to come with her, and the two of them read aloud, "Danger is in front of you, safety is behind you. 2 of us can help you." This is a riddle. Just reading it out makes Neville feel like he has been confused. But Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. Many of the greatest wizards don't have any logical reasoning skills, so they have to be trapped here forever. Hermione said confidently. Neville didn't believe it, so he read it again, and his head suddenly became more dizzy. The solution to the puzzle can only be left to Hermione. 7 bottles, 3 are poison, 2 are wine, 1 will get us safely through the black fire, and the other will send us back through the purple fire. Hermione read the paper a few more times. She walked up and down in front of the row of bottles, talking to herself, and it took only a minute to figure out the whole puzzle. "I've found it," she said. "The potion in this bottle can help us pass through the black flames and get to the Philosopher's Stone." Neville looked at the bottle. "Do you want to drink them all?" he said. "Do you want just one person to drink them all?" Hermione glanced at Neville, who seemed to have guessed what she was going to say. "No. I won't go back." Before Hermione could say anything, Neville said in advance, "I know your relationship is relatively good, but..." However, Hermione insisted and interrupted, "Listen, Neville, if it were before breaking through the devil's trap, I wouldn't say anything and just turn around and leave. But your parents are almost recovering, can you bear to? Are you sad to see them? It's not easy for you to get a chance to be together again without having to visit them in the hospital." Ever since they passed through the troll room, they had all understood that in the next room they would not only encounter Harry, but also a thief who wanted to steal the Sorcerer's Stone. That person might be the mysterious man. Hermione finally said, revealing the secret that Harry discovered in the Forbidden Forest. Neville was visibly frightened. Then in the next second, Hermione watched helplessly as Neville suddenly snatched the bottle on the table and swallowed all the potion inside in one gulp. "Then I shouldn't have let you go." Neville endured the chill that spread all over his body. He didn't know if it was because of this that he kept shivering and couldn't stop. "This is a personal grudge." Neville mustered up his courage and said. Only then did he realize that he was not shivering because of fear or cold, but because of anger. The two looked at each other for a few seconds, Hermione's lips trembling. "Neville, you are an amazing wizard." I'm not as good as you." Neville said very embarrassedly, "This is all thanks to the wand Professor Tobyheimer bought me." "No, it's not." Hermione said, "Professor Hammer bought the wand for you, but now you are the one who makes the decision. I dare say that everyone underestimates you, Neville, they don't even. I don't know how brave you are, one day those people will change their view of you. Hermione said, grabbing the smallest bottle on the table and swallowing the potion inside. Then she turned her head and looked at Neville, her eyes filled with unprecedented determination. But not today. Chapter 109. Listen to me, Neville, you go back to Ron and grab the 2 broomsticks from the room with the flying key. They will carry you through the trapdoor and past the armor, go straight to the Oloy and send. Hedwig went to deliver a message to Dumbledore. We need him to come to the rescue, or any professor in the school. If that doesn't work, go to Dean McGonagall first. Have you remembered everything, Neville? Power. Neville was so shocked that he couldn't speak. He was still looking at the 2 bottles on the table in a daze. Sorry, Neville. Hermione could only whisper, but I really can't write to Mrs. Longbottom and tell him about you, you're bad news, no matter what. The person who should take the risk is not you, Your parents are still waiting for you. Remember? They are about to recover and are waiting to see you. Feel sorry. Hermione turned around and said, not wanting to look into Neville's eyes. Neville, I'm sorry. Just as she was about to walk through the black flames, she suddenly heard Neville's shout from behind. Then, Hermione hurriedly turned around. She saw something thrown at her by Neville, and subconsciously caught it with both hands. This is an old wand that seems to have been used for many years. This is my father's wand. Hermione saw that all the shock on Neville's face had disappeared, and only deep worry remained in his eyes. It will protect you. Neville said, just like it has been protecting me, even if I have a poor memory, I can still live well until now. I'm going to find Dean McGonagall now and I'll be back soon. After saying these words, Neville ran away in a hurry, running back along the purple flames. Thanks. Hermione said words that no one could hear and whispered thanks. Ever since Neville offered to be the first to jump into the trapdoor, Hermione knew that he had really made up his mind this time. But since he could remember, Neville saw his parents as 2 patients on the hospital bed. This was the first time they finally had a chance to get along normally. Hermione really couldn't bear to dash this hope, it would make her regret it for the rest of her life. She stared at the wooden door behind the black flames and kept whispering, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. Hermione felt that she had never been as courageous as Harry and Ron. She had been scared from the beginning. She had been scared before coming to Hogwarts. She was afraid because she was a Muggle-born and worried that she would not be able to compare with the new students from a wizarding family, so she memorized all the textbooks before the start of school. But even so, after officially enrolling, she did not dare to. There is no relaxation at all, and I take the time to study every day, for fear of not being able to compare with others and thus being discriminated against. Hermione was afraid that she would be discriminated against and that she would become incompatible with Hogwarts. This was her most fearful thing, and it did not change until she was imprisoned by Professor Heimer for the first time. Because after that confinement, she finally made 2 real friends, Harry and Ron. They gave Hermione more courage and allowed her to change her fear from Hogwarts to failing the exam. Now, Hermione was afraid that her parents might not see her anymore. It would be great if I could learn the Oblivion Charm. Even at this time, Hermione did not think of turning around and running away. The person who wants to steal the Philosopher's Stone is Voldemort. Hermione knew that Harry must be on the other side of the door because he was the boy who lived. His disappearance must be related to Voldemort. So, Hermione did something even more courageous than lying in front of the Dark Devil. The person she really wanted to help that time was actually herself, so that she could have an excuse to be expelled from Hogwarts and leave this school where she only felt cold. Only this time, only this time. Hermione pushed the door open and entered the last room. She is 4. Hermione's mind suddenly became chaotic, and Harry's figure was erased from her mind like an eraser, turning into an empty room in front of her. Where is Harry? Where is the magic stone? Why is there nothing? She quickly walked into the center of the room, then turned around, and finally saw the mirror of Ariste standing by the door, and her eyes quickly widened. Usually this face could only be seen on Ron. In the mirror of Ariste, Hermione did not see her own figure reflected in the mirror. Instead, she saw Harry, who was tied to a chair, and standing next to him, her eyes constantly darting around. Quirrell. These 2 people appeared inexplicably in the mirror. Hermione, whose head was spinning rapidly, understood what was going on in an instant. She immediately pulled out her wand, pointed it at Quirrell in the mirror, and shouted. Let Harry go now, Quirrell, I thought you were a good person. However, Quirrell in the mirror didn't seem to hear Hermione's words at all. Harry was the only one looking at Hermione on the other side of the mirror, but it didn't seem like they were looking at each other, but that Harry was being forcibly fixed. His eyes were blocked and he could not move his head or eyes. Hermione shouted again, and she moved quietly, but the two people in the mirror showed no reaction at all. What exactly happened here? Hermione threw herself in front of the mirror, and then quickly retracted her hand to break the mirror. She was not sure what would happen when she broke the mirror. What if Harry couldn't get out? At this moment, Hermione almost thought she was hallucinating. The whole room flashed from the top of her head to the floor. Just looking at those complex shiny patterns made Hermione feel as if she was about to faint. She felt sick and uncomfortable in her heart. In an inadvertent glance, she saw all the patterns gathered on the surface of the mirror of Archaeologist, and as the light in the room flickered, she vaguely saw 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 7. This is a 7-pointed star magic circle. But Professor Heimer clearly said in class that this does not exist. At this moment, Hermione suddenly heard someone saying to herself, "If I were you, I wouldn't try to remember the magic circle just now, Miss Granger. Not all ancient magic is harmless. I believe you should have understood this a long time ago." As the light of the magic circle dimmed, another figure suddenly appeared next to Hermione, as if it had been conjured out of thin air. "Professor Haymo!" Hermione shouted in fear and joy until she noticed the scratches on Professor Haymer's face. "Professor, are you injured?" "A trivial accident is the surprise left for me by the centaurs." Toby walked to the mirror and said, "White fresh food will leave scars. It would be better to wait until you return to the school hospital for treatment. A neat appearance can lower the enemy's vigilance and make it less likely to make people feel vigilant. Facts have proved that this method very effective, especially in front of dark wizards." Centaurs. Hermione subconsciously blocked out the second half of the thrilling words, but even so, all the joy in her eyes disappeared. She noticed that something was wrong with Professor Heimer's state at this time, and he was gloomier and calmer than before. What was even more terrifying was that she just remembered that during the last visit to the Forbidden Forest, Professor Heimer had threatened the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest. Could it be that? Hermione couldn't help but think about the worst. Professor Heimer kills all those centaurs? However, Toby seemed to know what Hermione was thinking, and added a little gentleness to his calm tone. "Things are not what you think. On the contrary, I have been deliberately avoiding similar things from happening. The influence of ancient magic on me is deep enough, and there is no need to speed up the process. Perhaps, I should have done this earlier, when Lily first persuaded me." Professor Heimer's voice became softer and softer, and Hermione panicked again when she heard the word enough. This news didn't sound good, and it couldn't be comforting at all. "Or," said Heimer. "Is the professor's usual way of comforting people so direct?" When Hermione saw Quirrell in the mirror taking out a red gem from Harry's trouser pocket, Hermione's panic immediately turned into panic. "Professor Heimer!" Hermione shouted anxiously to Toby, who was deep in thought, "Isn't that the Philosopher's Stone? Quirrell has already obtained it, stop him quickly." But Toby was just staring at the mirror, and Hermione was horrified to see a smile appear on his face. Hermione thought that Voldemort had taken Professor Highmore as his subordinate at some point, until she heard Professor Highmore ask her a question, which pulled her back from the terrifying fantasy to the rigorous classroom. "Do you still remember the wooden sword you used for dueling when you were first imprisoned?" "Remember, Professor?" Hermione replied with a guilty conscience. She had secretly played a trick during that confinement, but judging from later signs, Professor Heimer discovered it. As for the wooden swords they used for duels, a special magic circle was engraved on those wooden swords. They would only cause pain to the person being struck, but would not cause any real injuries. "These are the same principles," Toby said calmly. He moved closer to the mirror so that he could observe Quirrell's actions more clearly. "Everything that happens in the mirror is false. It will only reveal the deepest desires of the imprisoned people, and it is also the deepest secret in their hearts. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." To be honest, Hermione has never seen Voldemort with her own eyes, but compared to Quirrell in the mirror, Professor Highmore standing next to her is undoubtedly more terrifying. Hermione was really glad that it wasn't Professor Highmore who was locked in the mirror. She couldn't even imagine what she would see. She should indeed be grateful for this. Because Toby has been waiting for this moment. In order to completely eliminate pure blood superiority, it is also for revenge. A revenge that only belongs to him. Chapter 110. Harry was going crazy. After being forcibly fixed his gaze, he saw himself in the mirror smiling at himself. The other person reached into his pocket and took out a bright red stone, then blinked and put the stone into his pocket again. At this moment, Harry felt that something heavy had really fallen into his pocket. It was incredible he actually got the Philosopher's Stone like this. However, this had no effect on delaying Quirrell. He kept his eyes on Harry and soon noticed the partially bulging pocket. As a result, Quirrell got the Philosopher's Stone easily. Harry wanted to stop Quirrell, but he couldn't do anything. The effect of the petrification spell had not been lifted yet, and very quickly, Harry's thoughts changed from stopping to wanting to scream in fear. The moment Quirrell succeeded, another face appeared on his increasingly crazy face. Harry had never seen such a ferocious and terrifying face. The face was as white as chalk. The red eyes were shining, and underneath were two slender nostrils like snakes. "It's Voldemort! Harry Potter!" he whispered. Voldemort stared at him with hateful eyes. Just by being glanced at, Harry felt as if a piece of flesh was about to be cut out. "Owner!" Quirrell carefully reminded that he could still control his body now, but another face that emerged seemed to make him feel very uncomfortable. The Philosopher's Stone was lifted up little by little, and Harry was horrified to hear Voldemort ordering Quirrell, "Before I create a new body, I need some special materials. Kill Harry Potter. Collect his blood. The blood of my old enemy will make me stronger. Kill Harry Potter." Harry saw the expression on Quirrell's face stiffened for a second, but soon Quirrell made up his mind and walked towards Harry. "Don't." Harry tried hard to meet Quirrell's eyes and not look into Voldemort's eyes. "Don't do that, Professor, don't." But just when Quirrell was about to strike, Harry suddenly jumped up from his chair. He didn't know when he got rid of the influence of the petrification curse and broke free from the restraints of the rope. "Ah!" Harry roared and rushed towards Quirrell, using his wand as a dagger in desperation. He couldn't think of any spells and wished he could have an automatic casting wand. But a dagger is enough, even a fake one. Harry could not let Voldemort's plan succeed no matter what. He only wanted to avenge his parents. Quirrell was startled by Harry's actions. He was at best a half-baked dark wizard and didn't have much dueling experience. The distance between the two was really too close, and Harry almost grasped the most important thing. He had no time to resist, but in the blink of an eye he rushed in front of Quirrell and wanted to insert the tip of the wand into Quirrell's eye socket. However, Quirrell easily pushed Harry's palm away. As a new student, Harry's physical strength was far inferior to that of an adult wizard. But in the next moment, Quirrell watched his arm being kicked away by Harry, and the Sorcerer's Stone in his hand flew into the air. Harry jumped up suddenly. Even though there was no broomstick under him, his skills as a seeker were still there. He jumped into the air and grabbed the slowly falling Sorcerer's Stone. "Stop him quickly!" Voldemort roared. Harry fell heavily to the ground. Quirrell hurried over and turned Harry over with his back facing him. He saw that Harry's mouth became bulging, and as his throat vibrated hard, the Philosopher's Stone fell out. It was forcefully swallowed into Harry's stomach. He met Quirrell's gaze like a victor, and said with a pale face, "Dumbledore will help me get revenge. You will never escape from Hogwarts." Amidst Quirrell's roar, Harry's breath became weaker and weaker, and finally his head tilted, and all consciousness fell into darkness and silence. Harry felt that his body was falling and falling, as if it would never reach the end. Is this what death feels like? Harry thought silently, so did his parents. Oh, Harry! Harry felt as if he had been knocked down by an orange cat, except that the orange cat was much larger than he expected, almost the same size as him. And this tone sounded too familiar. He quietly opened his eyes and saw a tearful Hermione hugging him so hard that he couldn't breathe. Where am I? Why are you here? Harry asked with difficulty. Are you also? I'm fine. Hermione finally let go of Harry. Her eyes were swollen from crying, as if she had been crying for a long time. And Harry finally found Professor Hamo standing aside. Until this moment he was sure that Hermione was not dead, and he was not dead either. Otherwise, Professor Hamo would have to look like a devil at the very least. It was impossible. Continuing to maintain the human form as it is now. Harry turned his head again, and he finally saw Quirrell on the other side of the mirror, and judging from the signs, Harry's plan undoubtedly failed. Quirrell still got the Sorcerer's Stone and successfully escaped from Hogwarts. A large pot of potion is being brewed in a dark room. Professor Heimer, who was standing in front of the mirror, had no intention of explaining to Harry. He was staring at Quirrell intently. Harry was also secretly pulled aside by Hermione and explained what had happened before. including the strangeness of the Mirror of Arist and the mysterious seven-pointed star magic circle. I guess Professor Highmore wants to take this opportunity to solve the mystery man once and for all. Hermione whispered, he is observing the follow-up plan of the mystery man. Harry was shocked, speechless, so everything that happened before was fake. Then what came over him was unspeakable embarrassment. What he had just done was seen by Professor Hammer and Hermione. In the end, Harry felt that Professor Highmore even seemed a little scary, even scarier than Voldemort. Otherwise, how could he come up with such a strange plan? Harry tried his best to calm himself down, and he silently comforted Hermione. Hermione felt excited and sad precisely because Harry died heroically in the mirror. Although she knew that Harry would be fine, she was still a little worried. Against the backdrop of the two of them, Toby, who had a calm face, suddenly seemed inhumane at all, and looked even more cold and heartless. And as time slowly passed, both of them found that the expression on Professor Hamo's face became more and more gloomy and terrifying, and his whole body exuded the aura of being forbidden to strangers. This could only be related to the image in the Mirror of Arist. On the other side of the mirror, Quirrell was rewarded for helping Voldemort shape his body again. They soon reassembled a group of hooded Death Eaters, and Quirrell actually became the new leader of the Death Eaters, surpassing the status of all old members. When the scene once again showed Quirrell punishing the wizards who had bullied him during school, Toby could no longer watch calmly. "Close your eyes," Toby reminded him coldly, and Harry and Hermione quickly followed suit. In the next moment, whether it was the entire room or the Mirror of Arist, all the magic arrays flashed together again, and the complex patterns gathered together and merged into the floating magic ball little by little, making it complete again. It wasn't until they heard the sound of something heavy falling that Harry and Hermione dared to open their eyes again. They saw Professor Highmore tightly holding Quirrell's collar, while Quirrell was still in a high and beautiful state, and had not yet recovered from the sudden change. In Quirrell's eyes, almost in the blink of an eye, all the glory disappeared, and his eyes turned into a pair of angry eyes, like the eyes of a fire dragon, and like a devil returning from hell. "Tell me." Toby's anger was about to burst into hot flames. He pressed his wand against Quirrell's neck and roared loudly. "Where is the mysterious man?" Chapter 111. Toby's plan failed. From the beginning to the end, what appeared in the magic mirror was only the picture imagined by Quirrell gaining glory, avenging his enemies, so that no one dared to look down upon himself anymore. But in the mirror, only the picture dominated by Voldemort no longer appeared, but became a hidden terror, only showing up very rarely. Voldemort was not locked in the Mirror of Arist at all, nor was he parasitic on Quirrell at this time. He deceived everyone, including Quirrell himself. After learning the truth, Quirrell suddenly became disheartened. He couldn't even utter a complete sentence. He just kept shrinking and said, I don't know. I have no idea." He turned back to the Quirrell he was before, the one who was looked down upon by everyone. But Toby didn't intend to let him go just like that. A series of sparks shot out from the tip of the black walnut wand, and Toby threatened in a cold tone, "It seems that you are not going to tell the truth, but it doesn't matter, I know where to find Veritaserum. Also, there is a forgetting curse, are you going to use it as an excuse? I happen to know a way to remove the influence of the forgetting curse. As long as the wizard whose memory has been forgotten is subjected to extreme pain, he can recall everything you want. Taste the pain, Quirrell, do you want to taste the Cruciatus curse?" "Professor!" Hermione screamed in shock. She knew what the Cruciatus curse meant. This was what she had read from the Ancient Magic Office's collection of books. But when Professor Highmore looked at her coldly, Hermione immediately regretted it. Professor Highmore looked very scary at this time, just like when he heard that Mr. Owl was almost injured in the Forbidden Forest. Hermione quietly grabbed Harry's wrist, silently planning to run away with Harry as soon as the timing was right. But at this moment, Harry suddenly asked, "Why don't you give Quirrell to Principal Dumbledore? He must have a way to make Quirrell speak, right?" Harry had already seen that Professor Highmore was on the verge of rage. His intention in saying these words was to move out Principal Dumbledore to prevent Professor Highmore from doing anything irreparable. Harry knew that Dumbledore was the only one who could make Professor Highmore obey. However, what Harry didn't know was that his words were a real wake-up call for Toby. Just before they were about to leave, Dumbledore planned to go to Albania. And according to the principal, that was also the rumored Voldemort. The location that has been secretly hidden. Therefore, Harry and Hermione were surprised to see Professor Highmore regaining his composure little by little. He conjured a set of ropes and tied them to the wilting Quirrell. "Let's go." Toby warned, "Don't try to play tricks in front of me, otherwise even Dumbledore won't be able to save you." Harry and Hermione finally breathed a sigh of relief. They exchanged glances with each other, and each saw another kind of worry emerging from the other's eyes, but they both felt that now was not the right time to speak. The punishment would come later. "Ask again. I just hope Professor Hammer doesn't really reduce Gryffindor's house points to nothing." However, while they were silently watching Professor Heimer put out the black flames in the door frame, they heard the professor ask them, "Mr. Potter, and Miss Granger, do you have any explanation for your actions?" Of course, Harry and Hermione regarded this as a reflection on their respective actions. They did not dare to hide anything, let alone lie in front of the professor at this moment, and told the whole story in a series not only. It belongs to them, even Neville and Ron have not let it go. It is easier to reveal it in advance than to be punished later. Ron and Neville both know Professor Hammer's temper. He hates students lying in front of him. "Professor, I was wrong. I shouldn't have become so willful after seeing that note." "Professor, I was wrong too. I should have gone to other professors first. I shouldn't have concealed Harry's disappearance." Ron shouldn't be brave, and Neville shouldn't have to set off with us, but should stop us. All in all, both of them are almost describing themselves as heinous dark wizards, as good as Peeves, and it might make people wonder why they haven't been imprisoned in Azkaban yet. After the black flames were extinguished, Toby pushed Quirrell toward the Riddle house, and then he began to extinguish the purple flames at the exit. "Wrong." Toby, who had his back turned to the two of them, suddenly said, "None of your reviews are on point. First of all, you, Mr. Potter, the place you should really go to after receiving the note is the Ancient Magic Office. Until now you don't you understand where I go every day? Do you think I will be a professor who likes trophy rooms? Is it so difficult for you to keep track of the professor's movements?" "Harry, hey. And you, Miss Granger, you should have thought of the mysterious person earlier. Instead of treating the disappearance as a simple indiscretion whenever you make a decision, you should plan for the worst and roughly estimate how many points Gryffindor House will be deducted and how much impact it will have on you." "Hermione, hey. As for Mr. Weasley and Mr. Longbottom, I will talk to them personally if I have the chance. There are indeed many areas where you need to improve, and just admitting your mistakes will not prevent you from being punished. I have also. As naive as you are, I didn't finally know what to do until I discovered that this method didn't work at all on Principal Dumbledore." Harry and Hermione no longer dared to make any sound. Something was wrong with what they heard. Professor Heimer's method of teaching students was really unique, actually teaching them how to learn to be bad. Especially when the purple flame was extinguished and Professor Heimer turned to look at them, the two of them were shocked and speechless. Professor Heimer was actually smiling at them. "No matter what, your actions have fully demonstrated the Gryffindor house spirit, whether it is Mr. Weasley's sacrifice, Mr. Longbottom's sacrifice, and the sacrifice of the two of you in front of danger. They are all full of tactful and courageous, not entirely reckless. I should have rewarded you, but considering that you didn't do it perfectly, the reward this time will offset the punishment. This is the result of my treatment of you." Although this series of words sacrifice made the two of them feel very uncomfortable, after all four of them were still alive and well, they couldn't help but feel happy. "Is it true, Professor?" Harry said in surprise. "Gryffindor finally doesn't need to be deducted points. We don't have to be in solitary confinement anymore." Hermione was even happier than Harry. "Then when can I go back to work as a proofreader?" "There is no such thing." Toby suddenly changed back to the incarnation of indifference, and he criticized seriously, "Please note, Miss Granger, all your rewards are only enough to offset the punishment. There is no way to get more rewards. There is no doubt that since Cedric successfully made the automatic magic wand, everyone regarded it as the work of Professor Hammer. The so-called editor naturally became the real reward, but there are many people. They don't even dare to approach Professor Heimer." "Oh, okay," Hermione said frustratedly. Harry silently patted her shoulder to express comfort. "Be happy, kids." Toby turned around and said, opening the door, "When you go back, you will become a legend among students. If it were me, I would make good use of this opportunity to form a club that belongs only to me. It's a pity that I didn't have this opportunity when I was in school. As you know, I am a Muggle-born Slytherin and can't really implement this plan." Sev. Lay refuses to listen to me. Harry and Hermione decided to pretend that they hadn't heard anything, and it was impossible to take Professor Hammer's words seriously. In addition to the fact that this plan sounded a bit evil, it was more because the stench of the troll house had already spread in, so that they had to cover their noses with their sleeves and were unable to respond. Toby did the same. While staring at Quirrell, he continued to babble behind his sleeves, "What a pity. I have been regretting the failure of this plan, and I don't know why. The principal also knew about this plan. He called me to the office and trained me for a long time. Maybe you will encounter a similar situation in the future, and these next words may be helpful to you if you are called. When you go to the principal's office to lecture, don't show any impatience. The principal is more patient than you all think. He no longer needs to teach, and he has plenty of time to waste with you." In short, Harry and Hermione didn't hear what was said behind it. Just as they stepped over the giant monster's thick legs, they suddenly heard Professor Heimer shouting coldly, "Protect the Philosopher's Stone." Toby was standing on the other side of the troll's legs. He watched helplessly as a black shadow suddenly emerged from the back of the troll's head, which was lying on its back, and flew straight towards Harry. It turned out that Voldemort was really possessed by Voldemort. The location is on the unconscious troll. Harry immediately covered his pocket tightly. He couldn't stand still for a moment and fell to the smelly floor. Hermione wanted to block him, and Toby also controlled the magic ball to fly towards Harry, trying to kill him. "Protect it." Harry's panicked face was very close. Just when the black shadow was about to touch Harry's pocket, the opponent suddenly turned around and possessed the magic ball behind him, causing the golden lines to turn into black little by little, and the silver ball also turned into a black one. It turned into a pitch-black witch robe, and a pair of red eyes flashed from the darkness of the hood, meeting Toby's suddenly gloomy gaze. "Haven't seen you for a long time." A hoarse and cold voice came from the hood, sounding like a poisonous snake speaking. "Tobyheimer," Voldemort said. Chapter 112. The atmosphere in the troll house was almost stagnant, as Toby and Voldemort faced each other silently. Quirrell, who was behind Toby, looked at this scene in shock. Harry and Hermione were also stunned by the sudden change. Voldemort's target turned out to be the magic ball. Harry was still clutching his pocket tightly and did not dare to relax. He was afraid that this was just another trick of Voldemort, but he couldn't figure out why the magic ball could help Voldemort recover so quickly. It was better than the magic ball made with the magic stone. Could the elixir be more convenient? Soon, Harry heard Professor Heimer murmuring across from him, "I have never known what the real material of the magic ball is. Now it seems that it should be similar to the dead animals in the Forbidden Forest. That's why the magic ball will escape my control after being possessed by you." "Is it the centaur prophet who told you? This is the question you asked her when you were hiding in the Forbidden Forest. If you can create your own faster body of..." "You guessed it right." The pale face was not revealed in the hood of the witch's robe. It was dark under the red eyes, like an invisible whirlpool, but Voldemort's words could still be heard there. "It's all thanks to you. Ancient magic. Thanks to you, for returning to Hogwarts. I told you a long time ago, Hamo, that one day, you will serve me. Whether it is willingly or in a wrong way, like now, like a magic ball. This is the fate of trying to master ancient magic. You are dueling with an invisible beast, and you cannot judge whether it is good or bad until you become one of the beasts and become a part of ancient magic. It's more dangerous and more fascinating than black magic." Toby narrowed his eyes slightly and stared closely at the witch robe transformed from the magic ball. "Really, so you are going to try the same old method again to convince me to work for you?" "No." Voldemort made a long voice, full of mockery in his tone. "Ever since I found out that you left England, I knew that you would rather die than serve for me, just like the parents of the child behind me. They are very brave. I have always admired courage, but they became weak and stupid in front of their children. I killed his father first, but he would rather die than surrender and fight me bravely. And his mother, Lily Evans, actually didn't have to die, but she fought tooth and nail to protect her child. What about you, Tobyheimer? You don't have the courage they dare to stay and fight me, but you have your own weaknesses, right?" He said coldly and sarcastically. "Do you want me to tell you what your weakness is? Do you think I really haven't discovered it?" Toby quietly held the wand in his sleeve, and he shot back, "I thought you had known it for a long time. Without a doubt, Albus Dumbledore, he is my weakness, he has been there from the beginning. Observe me and try your best to make me obedient." Voldemort suddenly let out an extremely cold laugh, interrupting Toby's self-narration. "Until now, are you still waiting for Dumbledore to save you? He will not be your weakness, he will only be the constraint of your ambition. Yes, I know this very well, and I know you will not be that kind of person. People who are willing to surrender are even less willing to be anyone's subordinate. How do you explain it to other people now? How do you explain it to students and professors, and do you still call it an ideal? No, that's just ambition, your growing ambition. I understand this very well. I have been on the same path as you. Perhaps, even the Sorting Hat has said similar things to us. This has nothing to do with origin, nothing to do with the academy, nothing to do with anyone, it's just because of ourselves. You are born evil. Hammer, admit it, you are born evil. The biggest difference between us is that I have already understood the world, and you are the only one who is still foolishly looking for a way to be rescued. You are very afraid of evil, aren't you? Dumbledore successfully tamed you, so only then will you return to Hogwarts. You are asking for help, you are screaming with all your life, look at yourself, how pitiful you are. This is your weakness. You have become weak, Highmore. I will wait to see the day when your relationship with Dumbledore breaks down. When achievements can no longer fill your ambitions, when Dumbledore's power can no longer restrain you, when the influence of ancient magic on you further deepens. This will happen sooner or later. I will look forward to the day when you become enemies. Harry and Hermione listened to the conversation between the two with trepidation. They saw Professor Heimer's expression as if something was being said, and his face became more and more twisted and crazy. Then do you know what I'm waiting for? Toby said through gritted teeth, as if he wanted to eat Voldemort alive. Then do you know what your weakness is? Let me tell it myself, Al. The situation in the field suddenly changed. Al, who had disappeared for a long time, appeared next to Harry and Hermione at some point. It was covered with Harry's invisibility cloak, which was originally on Neville to help him and Ron. Leave the room where the armor is and avoid being split open by the opponent's axe. Voldemort's black-robed figure retreated quickly, but in the blink of an eye, Harry and Hermione were enveloped by the invisibility cloak, and there was no trace of them anymore. This is Voldemort's weakness. He cannot control the troll's body when possessed, nor can he completely control the powerful magic ball. Once the magic ball melts and turns into a magic circle, Voldemort's body cannot continue to maintain it. Toby had already seen this clearly, but had been waiting for Al to help hide Harry and Hermione. Now he finally no longer had any scruples, raised his wand and shouted loudly, "Split into pieces." What he really wants to attack is not Voldemort, but the possessed magic ball. As long as he can hit the body shaped by the magic ball, Voldemort will no longer have the slightest support. Boom! The spell went wrong and hit the wall of the house with the surface of the invisibility cloak, causing pieces of the stone wall to shatter and turn into powder and fly everywhere. Harry and Hermione were horrified to see them under the invisibility cloak. Al quickly patted his chest, constantly congratulating himself on drinking the elixir of happiness. It was Quirrell who knocked Toby away, but judging from his frightened expression, it seemed that Quirrell did not do so voluntarily. He flew uncontrollably towards the incoming Voldemort, and was used by Voldemort again. The whole body was shrouded in a pitch-black witch robe, and the eyes in his face turned blood red. Ah! Quirrell screamed in pain, and the magic ball strengthened the life needed for Voldemort's possession. Quirrell felt as if his soul had been soaked in hot magma, and his brain was so painful that it was about to burst. This was also how Harry felt at this time. The scar on his forehead was in pain, and he felt as if his head was split in two. He bent down and shouted loudly, his voice revealing the position of the invisibility cloak. Regardless of Al. No matter how hard Hermione and I tried to stop him, it was of no use. Quirrell's mouth opened, and two voices came out at the same time. One was Quirrell's own shout, and the other was Voldemort's cold mockery. "This is also your fate, Quirrell. Haven't you always been eager to be noticed? Now, start celebrating. You're about to succeed." Quirrell's body began to lose control of himself, and it was far more severe than ever before. The pain made him recall all the forgotten memories, including every time the forgetting curse was cast, and the initial pain before the start of school. The pot of mysterious potion he made originally, he thought it was just to remove the scars caused by the shadowless curse, but then he was unknowingly controlled by Voldemort, and until today he is completely unable to control his body. And a letter from Christmas. Quirrell recalled the contents of the letter in a daze of consciousness. Professor Quirinus Quirrell, congratulations on becoming the most popular professor at Hogwarts, Merry Christmas. It turns out that he had done it a long time ago and started to attract people's attention. Unfortunately, Quirrell suddenly let go of all resistance and was willing to be controlled by Voldemort. He had already fallen deeper and deeper, not only because of his ambition at the beginning, but also because of the more dark magic he came into contact with later. He can't change the impact of black magic on himself. Black magic is never just a tool, it will lead wizards to think in evil directions, be affected from the inside out, and eventually turn into real evil bit by bit. Only a handful of wizards can avoid this, and Quirrell. He is too weak. The screams coming from the witch robe disappeared little by little, and Voldemort coldly laughed and said, "Take a good look, Hamo, and remember this scene in your heart. One day, you will become no different from Quirrell." Suddenly, a spell struck, and Voldemort's voice suddenly stopped. Just on the surface of Quirrell's original body, a complex and cumbersome pattern lit up. It turned out to be a magic circle, which completely restrained Quirrell in the blink of an eye, making him unable to move again. This is the effect of the Mirror of Arist. Whoever comes out of the mirror will be imprinted with this magic circle without knowing it, waiting for Toby to trigger it completely. Almost at the same time, Quirrell's screams were triggered again, and Voldemort mercilessly absorbed all his vitality, turning him into ashes and dissipating in just an instant. Voldemort escaped immediately, but he did not choose to escape outside, but flew towards the direction where Harry's voice came from. Now Harry was almost exposed outside the invisibility cloak. He was in unbearable pain and could no longer maintain his standing position. His vision was completely blurred by tears. "So you still need the Philosopher's Stone?" Toby said fiercely, shooting more spells at the flying witch robe, but Voldemort became more and more skillful in manipulating the magic ball. He did not need to actually transform into a witch robe, but turned his body into a ball again. He successfully evaded all the spells, leaving a series of flying rubble behind him, filling the entire room with a thin layer of smoke. Harry heard Voldemort's voice getting closer and closer to him. "Let me see if you will also be cruel to your own students and kill this boy." Ah! As soon as the magic ball touched Harry's body, a shrill scream came from it, as if Harry's body was like hot molten iron to Voldemort. The pain was directly inflicted on his soul. After seeing this, Toby's eyes flickered slightly, but he immediately reminded loudly, "Al, take Granger away quickly." But they were too close together under the invisibility cloak, and the magic ball almost touched Hermione's witch robe just as they were retreating. Al took out a small silver shovel and tried to knock the magic ball away. But he accidentally scratched the pocket of Hermione's witch robe, and a wand flew out from it, which was caught by Hermione in the palm of her hand. Me. Hermione had no idea what spell to use to protect herself at this time, but the wand seemed to have already figured it out on its own. It turned around between Hermione's fingers and just pointed the tip of the wand at the incoming magic ball. And then a spell was shot out of it, hitting the magic ball impartially. The magic ball seemed to have hit an invisible wall. The moment it was about to touch Hermione's witch robe, it turned into countless small silver specks, floating silently in rows in the air. But at the same time, a blurry black shadow flew out from the neutral horse, still rushing towards Hermione, who was retreating rapidly, and was about to complete another possession. This time, it was the wand in Hermione's hand again. It separated from her fingers like a sharp arrow, shot into the center of the illusory black shadow, exploded completely with a bang, and turned into countless powders. The painful screams spread throughout the room, and the smoke filled everywhere. Toby hurried to the other end of the room and heard a reassuring cry coming from the thickest part of the smoke. Ah! At the critical moment, Al's small shovel grew countless times in size and was inserted deeply into the gaps between the stone bricks on the ground, protecting both it and Hermione. Harry on the other side only rolled around on the ground a few times. Neither his face nor his arms showed any injuries more serious than the scar on his forehead. He just fell into a coma like Hermione. Toby took a deep breath. Regardless of the mess, he slowly sat on the ground. In his heart, he felt that today seemed to be back to the days of archaeology in the past. At that time, he also needed to be so cautious to avoid causing too much damage to the ruins. Destruction can only be harvested after defeating the enemy. Occasionally, you need to carefully avoid dark creatures. Of course, those enemies are definitely not as good as Voldemort, and Toby has never had to spend so much effort to deal with them. After Al struggled to pull out the shovel a few times, he called out to Toby twice. Toby waved his hand feebly, letting it resolve itself. Al had to pick up Hermione's wand again. The wand that had just exploded was the wand that Neville had thrown to Hermione before, which was Frank Longbottom's. It seemed that he needed to buy himself a new wand after he recovered. I hope Mr. Ollivander won't embarrass him too much. As for Hermione's wand, during the explosion just now, even she herself didn't know when it fell into Al's hands. Al picked up the wand and waved it. It screamed twice in a pretentious manner, and then pointed at his shovel. A dim magic circle suddenly flashed on the surface of the shovel, and the shield returned to its original size. Al gently pulled it out from the stone brick and wiped it carefully back and forth. According to the code of wand use, no non-human creature is allowed to carry or use a wand. After putting Hermione's wand back into her pocket, Al jumped up and climbed onto Toby's shoulders. It fiddled with the long hair on the side of Toby's face a few times, tilted its neck and asked, "Yet?" Toby stared at the huge giant monster with distracted eyes, silently guessing whether the giant monster survived the battle. At the same time, he muttered perfunctorily, "It's not a big deal. Well, as long as no one else finds out." Since then, the effects of the elixir the two of them took have completely disappeared. Chapter 113. Harry felt himself falling and falling in the darkness, until he saw a golden thing flashing above his head. It was a snitch. He wanted to catch it, but his arms were too heavy to lift. He blinked and realized that it was not a snitch at all, but a pair of glasses. He blinked hard again, and the smiling face of Albus Dumbledore gradually appeared in front of him. "Good afternoon, Harry," said Dumbledore. Harry stared at him blankly at first, and then suddenly remembered, "Sir. The Philosopher's Stone. It's Quirrell. And then oh no, it's the mysterious man, he." "Don't get excited, dear boy, what you said is a bit outdated," said Dumbledore. "Voldemort did not get the Sorcerer's Stone. I also suggest that you call him that, and always use the correct name for things. The fear of a name will intensify the fear of the thing itself." Okay, sir." Harry swallowed and looked around. He realized that he was in a hospital. He was lying on a hospital bed covered with white linen sheets. The table next to him was piled like a hill, as if half a candy store was occupied. "Moved here." He remembered more things. There seemed to be an explosion before he fell into coma. Hermione, Mr. Al were all very close to the center of the explosion, and Professor Heimer. "Are Hermione and Mr. Al okay?" Harry asked. "Are they injured too?" "Al is fine, and Miss Granger has recovered after staying in the hospital for one night." Dumbledore said, "Only you, Harry, you were unconscious for 3 days, Mr. Ron Weasley and Miss Granger will be relieved to know that you are awake. They have been extremely worried." "So, what about the magic stone? And the magic ball? It seems that there is no way to distract you." "Well, let's talk about the Sorcerer's Stone and the magic ball. They are still safe and have not been obtained by Voldemort. The only difference is that the Sorcerer's Stone has been destroyed." "Destroyed?" Harry asked puzzledly, "But your friend Nico Flamel?" "Oh, you actually know about Nico?" Dumbledore asked, sounding very happy. "You have made this matter very clear, haven't you?" "That's right, Nico and I talked about it, and we agreed that this is the best way. Even though Toby complained about this, it's normal for him not to understand. He can't find where Nick lives, and he can't get any more clues from me. Just like Voldemort said, my existence is a bondage for Toby, and he must be obedient." Dumbledore said these words easily, but Harry felt panicked. He never asked about Professor Highmore's condition from the beginning, and he also deliberately avoided this question, but Dumbledore seemed to. He directly saw through his mind and took the lead in leading Professor Hamer out. This time, the person who couldn't be avoided was Harry. "Professor Highmore." Harry hesitated. "Is he still at Hogwarts?" "Why do you think so?" Dumbledore asked. "Did Voldemort's words have an impact on you, making you think that Toby is an inherently evil person?" "That's not all," Harry whispered. "Quirrell once told him that the death of his parents might be related to Professor Highmore, and that he was a person who ignored life. In addition, the conversation between Voldemort and Professor Highmore seemed to obscure the story. All the disguises on him were taken off at once." "Professor Heimer knows my parents?" Harry asked in confusion. "Are they friends?" "They?" Harry hesitated to ask, and Dumbledore looked at him with twinkling eyes. "About this matter, the situation is a bit complicated." Dumbledore was finally willing to speak. "Let me think about how to explain to you more appropriately. Well, he is indeed your mother. Friend, but the relationship with your father was not that good. Then, by chance, Toby rescued Severus, but he insisted that James had originally planned to do the same. This made Severus finds it difficult to accept that he and your father are enemies. I believe you have already felt this." "Of course." Harry thought of Snape's bad attitude towards him. Of course I understand, sir. But can you go into more detail? Professor Hammer is really my mother's friend, but why did he treat me so badly? But my father, does he like my mother? At the end of the sentence, Harry almost screamed. But Dumbledore smiled happily. Many people thought so at first, but the reality is not what they thought. This story started with a kind-hearted girl helping a boy who was discriminated against everywhere. They came from different colleges, but they both are interested in ancient magic and help each other. As for the relationship between the two, I believe that even Toby himself has thought about this issue, but gratitude cannot replace the role of love. They are just very good friends. Although this caused many misunderstandings from other people, it did not change anything because Toby knew his own heart very well, and he also valued his black walnut wand. The biggest requirement of wands for their owners is not to deceive themselves and others. Toby did this when he was in school, so he insisted that your father also wanted to save Severus, and always because Severus didn't willing to admit this and look down on him. To a certain extent, Toby is an extremely arrogant person, but at the same time he is extremely real. So you don't have to worry about whether he is really evil, he is just himself. Harry felt dizzy when he heard it. He couldn't imagine the stories of the previous generation when they were students. He still couldn't fully understand it now. But what about the death of my parents? Harry asked, did Professor Highmore have anything to do with their death? To Harry's surprise, Dumbledore fell into rare silence. It was only when Harry thought that Dumbledore would avoid talking about it that he slowly said in a sad tone, Lily's interest in ancient magic started because of Toby, but the two people had different personalities because of each other. They are going in different directions because of their differences. Toby has always been pursuing greater strength, but as for your mother, Lily, she has been studying love. Yes, Harry. That is also the magic she protects on you, just like Frank Longbottom's wand defeated the shapeless Voldemort, all because of love. Dumbledore sighed. Lily did not run away in front of Voldemort, nor did she give up on saving your life. She protected you with her love so that Voldemort could not touch you again. This is the relationship between Toby and the cause of your mother's death. Harry felt his chest suddenly become congested. He turned his head, and Dumbledore continued to speak, let's stop talking today, I have to go. Harry immediately turned his head around again, his eyes were red, but, sir, I still have many things to ask you. Let's wait until next time. Dumbledore turned to look at the door of the school hospital ward. Harry also turned to look and found that Professor Highmore had appeared there at some point. It's time for me to answer another student's question. Chapter 114. Principal Dumbledore walked out of the ward, closed the door gently, and then left the school hospital. Toby followed him silently, and the two of them walked down the quiet corridor one after another. The two of them were silent to each other along the way. It was not until they sat down in the office that Toby whispered to himself. No wonder Severus hates me so much. I didn't expect Lily to succeed. It seems that he blamed me for Lily's death. If it weren't for love, Lily might still have a chance to survive? No, that's not right. Lily would not do this, she is not this kind of person. Dumbledore asked Al what he wanted to drink with his eyes, and then he conjured a glass of lemonade and milk respectively and placed them in front of them. Al chewed on the straw, but Toby didn't look at the lemonade. He looked directly at Dumbledore and asked, Principal, did you already know that the mysterious man would take action at Hogwarts, so you sent me back to school to give me a chance to face the fears I once had? And Harry Potter, this is what you planned? His fate was determined from the beginning, so you gave him a chance to face Voldemort? Do you believe the boy who lived's rhetoric? Did you plan all this in advance? Toby's tone sounded very rude, as if he was questioning Dumbledore, but now, Toby couldn't help but think about the doubts in the whole process, especially in the final encounter with Voldemort. And the centaur prophet in the Forbidden Forest also said that he told Dumbledore the fact that Voldemort briefly stayed there. The principal seemed to know everything, but refused to say anything. The previous principals in the portrait murmured scoldings. They were all very dissatisfied with Toby's attitude. Phineas wanted to say something louder, but stopped after seeing Al's inadvertent glance. Come down, he can only be hung on the wall now, unable to get along with a weird-looking sniff. Dumbledore leisurely conjured a glass of water for himself. He drank all the water in the glass little by little, and then said calmly, You know, Toby, this is what I learned from Annie Bonny. The first drink of water that you rushed back to. He raised his head, and his tired eyes behind the lenses met Toby's eyes hidden behind his hair. Just like many people will forget that you are a student who graduated from Slytherin House. There are also many people who will always think that I am omnipotent, and they also ask for this from me. But only I know that now I can't even fulfill my wish. It will only exist in the illusory image of the mirror of Arist, and it will never change from false to true. Dumbledore conjured up another glass of water, and continued, as for Voldemort, yes, I know that he stayed in Hogwarts for a period of time. But what I don't know is where he hid, and I don't understand him. How did he survive, let alone whether his plan will change? As for the reason why I didn't tell you all this, think about it, Toby, if I stopped you from researching when you were in school. Ancient magic, what will you become now? Toby calmed down little by little, and he silently thought about what changes would happen to him. Black magic. He said frankly, if you try your best to prevent me from studying ancient magic from the beginning, then it seems that the only option I have is black magic. This is an obvious answer. When Toby was a student, he was surrounded by many classmates who studied dark arts, not to mention that he and Snape were close friends at the time. As for Lily, Lily alone cannot stop them. Even now, many years after Lily's death, Snape has never given up his pursuit of dark magic. Some things are difficult to change, or even impossible to change, and even time can't do anything about it. And Toby is born like this, just like what the Sorting Hat said to him when he was sorting the houses. Well, other houses can't accommodate you. How about Slytherin? You will definitely achieve something there. Dumbledore finally became more comfortable after drinking the second glass of water. He nodded and said, that's right. I know very well that the direction of the world will not change because of personal wishes, especially when you are a principal. When I was in the position, I couldn't tell the students what I wanted them to be like, so they would just do it. Instead, I had to make them change through guidance. I don't understand. Toby frowned and asked, what does this have to do with the concealment you made from me? You can obviously reveal some clues to me in advance, and in the final analysis, it still seems like you have planned it in advance. Everything, even suspected of taking advantage of me and Harry Potter. So this is how you view me. Unexpectedly, Dumbledore was smiling. I'm very happy to see that you haven't changed much because you left England, so I allowed you to stay at Hogwarts. But what I didn't expect was that you really saw me as the White Devil. This is also you. The reason why we chose to leave in the first place? Maybe we should have openly announced it earlier. Isn't it? Toby didn't understand why Dumbledore said that. He did think so, and felt that Dumbledore would never allow another student who might become a new threat at any time to stay when Voldemort was a threat. Dumbledore shook his head. I'm just prepared. He murmured in a low voice, on many things, I will prepare in advance. Some people only see part of the content, so they will misunderstand me. But I must see further than anyone else, and I need to be right. We know many situations well, otherwise innocent people are likely to die. The reason why you think this is just because I am not perfect, which is understandable, because I have defeated Grindelwald. After that, people will ask for more from me, even if I have tried my best, they will still. Someone is dissatisfied with me. But they have all forgotten that I am not omnipotent. Omnipotent. Dumbledore mentioned this word again. Al, who was biting his straw, raised his head, yet. Then it picked up the cup and moved closer to Toby. Ah! What is it talking about? Dumbledore asked with interest. Toby replied expressionlessly, it started by saying it would be nice if there were more Dumbledores in the world. As for the last sentence, he is worried that if this really happens, there will probably be the same number of White Devils in the world. Chapter 115. When the same words are spoken by different people, the effects are completely different. There was an extra plate of BB's multi-flavor beans in front of Al. He picked up one and threw it into the air, and then caught it with his mouth. Occasionally he yelped with joy, or he quickly stuck out his tongue and took a swig of milk. I want to get rid of the spicy taste in my mouth. As for Toby, who just translated the original meaning, he rubbed his red forehead and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. What on earth hit him just now? Toby was hit all of a sudden without seeing anything clearly. He is truly worthy of being the White Devil. He thought silently in his heart, and moved his chair back to maintain a safer distance from the principal. But this still doesn't explain the magic ball. Toby suddenly said, you could have told me in advance. As for Harry Potter. Well, he is an exception. Even I did not expect that the mysterious man would have his mind set on him Potter and magic. The connection between stones is still too far-fetched. The reason is simple. Dumbledore said calmly, as if he was not the one who had just taught Toby a lesson. At the beginning, I didn't think of the magic ball. The Centaur prophet only gave Voldemort a vague answer if he wants to recover his body. The real key lies in the reasons why he failed. There are two ways to interpret this prophecy, ancient magic, and black magic. Ancient magic is related to Lily's love, while black magic refers to the death curse. At this point, you should be able to guess why I didn't warn you in advance. This is a very general scope. The Philosopher's Stone was not included, or it was classified into ancient magic. And Harry's accident was indeed beyond my imagination. Before it actually happened, I never thought that he would be involved in Voldemort's resurrection. There is a connection. What about the Mirror of East? Toby continued to ask. During the Christmas holiday, you clearly helped Harry Potter understand the special features of the Mirror of East. Isn't this for the final Guardian magic? Are you ready? Dumbledore said in a gentle tone, this sounds like a very interesting conjecture. But before that, why don't you think carefully about how I managed to appear in that room in advance? Toby blinked, because you happened to be using the Mirror of East. Dumbledore shook his head with a regretful expression, as if he was lamenting how his students suddenly became so stupid and couldn't understand such a simple thing. Al also glanced at Toby with disgust. He really should have been allowed to be a professor instead of Toby, who was only known to be suspicious. Toby knew he had guessed correctly, but he still felt embarrassed. He heard Dumbledore say, I remember that in Slytherin House there are two characteristics, shrewdness and resourcefulness. Thinking carefully is a good thing, but the prerequisite is that it must be used in the right direction, rather than being used against me all day long. To be honest, trust me. By now I really suspect that you want to be the principal of Hogwarts, and maybe you are planning to let me retire early due to an accident. While Dumbledore was teaching Toby, Toby first glared at Al. Then, in order to avoid the atmosphere being too awkward, Toby had to change the subject and asked, why are you going to see the Mirror of East at night? Dumbledore said calmly, since you know the function of the Mirror of East, do you still think I will tell you this secret? In other words, are you willing to tell me your true desire in the heart? Of course not. Toby admitted frankly, I don't want to quarrel with you anymore. Sometimes hiding from each other is not a bad thing. But isn't it? He suddenly began to talk to himself. If I had to guess the reason why you appeared in the corridor in the middle of the night, I remember that just a few days ago, we just learned that House, the fifth founder, would be. Is it related to him? But why? Is it because of the wizard supremacy that was later speculated? Wizard supremacy, well. You do it because of Gellert Grindelwald. Boom. There was another red mark on Toby's forehead, and he finally saw it clearly. This time it was the top he often used to avoid sight that hit him. Dumbledore stretched out his hand to catch the falling top. He said calmly, it's really strange. I didn't know that this gadget would take the initiative to help me teach a troublesome student. Speaking of which, it is somewhat similar to Frank's wand. Similar? Isn't what you are going to say next about love? Toby originally said this because of the abnormality of the wand in the battle. According to Dumbledore, Frank's love for his son Neville did exist on that wand, so he used it in the battle. Show off in battle. However, what shocked Toby was that Dumbledore actually smiled and nodded after hearing these words. You're right, Toby. Toby suddenly felt like he was being targeted by a lion. If he said one more word on this topic, he would be retaliated against like never before. This is a characteristic that the Black Walnut Wand gives to its owner, or in other words, only such an owner can control the Black Walnut Wand, possessing keen intuition and insight. Toby chose to trust his instincts. Ahem. He coughed hard twice, put his arms on the table, crossed the fingers of his hands and said seriously, tell me about what you discovered in Albania, Principal. The mysterious man will definitely not die so easily. Did he later return to Albania? Dumbledore was very satisfied with Toby's performance. He did not pursue the matter any further, but answered, no, I suspect it is because Voldemort knew the news that I was in Albania, so he separated from me. Changed to a new hiding place. Before Toby could show regret, he was attracted by Dumbledore's next words. But, with clues from dead animals in the Forbidden Forest, I did find something in Albania. In a desolate forest, a large number of animal carcasses with the same characteristics once appeared, and they were all very close to a hollow tree. If I am right, that tree must have existed for at least 1,000 years. Already? Toby looked at Dumbledore eagerly. What then? That's all for now. Dumbledore's answer made Toby feel disappointed. Except for what was hidden in that hollow tree, we can't determine anything. At most, we can only judge the size of the items. But no matter what, this item must be related to Voldemort. Chapter 116. Well, it's better than finding nothing at all. Items. The items hidden in the hollow tree are still related to the mysterious person. Toby thought carefully for a while, but he couldn't deduce much useful content based on these clues alone. One last thing, principal. After recovering his thoughts, Toby stared closely at the light blue eyes behind the lenses. Why did Nick Flamel insist on destroying the Philosopher's Stone? He could have kept the Philosopher's Stone and given it to other people in need. Is not it? Who are you referring to? Dumbledore asked. I don't know. Toby replied casually, it can be you. After all, you are old and there will always be times when you need the elixir of life. Or, why can't it be me? While looking at each other intentionally or unintentionally, Dumbledore said, it seems that you still have a deep misunderstanding of me. Not everyone desires eternal life. For some people, death is just a long rest. It's an integral part of life, and some may even see it as relief, another great adventure. As for the other owner of the Philosopher's Stone, can I know your purpose, Toby? If you get the Philosopher's Stone, what are you going to do with it? I can't figure this out. You haven't arrived yet. When you must extend your life, it seems there is no shortage of gold. Toby gave Dumbledore an unexpected answer. Of course it's for teaching, Principal. The corners of Dumbledore's mouth twitched slightly, and Toby pretended not to notice. He continued to explain his course plan. I have already thought about what to teach next semester: immortality. This will be a good topic. Even in ancient magic, it has an unusual appeal, and students will definitely fall in love with this course. I have a lot of examples now. The Pharaoh mask I just got will be useful when the time comes, and the magic stone is famous, which will also add a lot of color to my subsequent teaching process. Dumbledore rubbed his brows with a headache. Are you sure you want to do this? Do you think it is appropriate to teach the new students this content? They will only learn the magic circle. Toby has obviously already thought of the entire teaching plan. Only second-grade students and above are eligible to learn these new contents. After a full year of edification, it's time to see the cruelty of the magical world. Anyway, they have long passed the age of becoming obscurus. Over 10 years old, even if they are stimulated by any kind of stimulation, they will not suddenly have an accident. Toby looked at Dumbledore in confusion. What's wrong, headmaster? Did I say something wrong? Why are you staring at me like this? I guarantee that no students will really get hurt in this class. Well, at least it won't be fatal. Dumbledore was staring at Toby with that lion-like gaze again. You really haven't come back secretly since you left England? Have you been to Godric's Hollow? Why do you ask? Toby asked, puzzled. Is Godric's Hollow named after Godric Gryffindor? It sounds very suitable for archaeology, but it is named after the founder. How many ruins have I missed? Maybe I should have come back earlier. That's it. Dumbledore suddenly interrupted Toby's soliloquy. We have talked for long enough, and I still have many things to be busy with. Toby, who was inexplicably ordered to be expelled, stood up. Just before he was about to leave the principal's office, he seemed to have come back to his senses and asked, one more thing, you haven't told me why Nick Flamel insisted on destroying Nick Flamel. Where's the magic stone? Toby knew that Nick Flamel had lived long enough, and in the previous explanation he wanted to destroy the Philosopher's Stone to prevent Voldemort from getting it. But this really couldn't convince Toby. Why couldn't the Philosopher's Stone be used again? What about hiding it? He is very willing to serve for this, even if he is targeted by Voldemort because of this. It is not a big deal. Before this, Toby did not know how Voldemort survived, which made the situation more difficult, and many ways to deal with it were also. It was useless. But during the recent battle, Toby had roughly figured out Voldemort's current state. He could have arranged a lot of preventive measures in advance to make Voldemort take the bait. After all, ancient magic includes not only magic circles, but also many other types of magic. There is always one of them that can catch Voldemort. Dumbledore picked up the newspaper on the corner of the table and said without raising his head. Because it's not an ordinary stone, it's the only magic stone. Toby came to the corridor, and he took Al back to the ancient magic office. Ah! Yes, the principal must be hiding something from us. He has his own considerations, not only for us, but also for Harry Potter. We have known for a long time that he pays special attention to this boy. Maybe the principal really. I think he has some unique characteristics. Ah! I don't know what the reason is. But the way the principal gave Harry Potter's education was very unique. I experienced it personally when I was a student. The principal knew that he couldn't change a person easily, but he understood that he should. How to guide students correctly. For example, I did not really devote myself to the great career of studying black magic. The principal knew what I was capable of, and he avoided the worst outcome. Moreover, he seemed to know Harry Potter very well. The principal pays close attention to him. Ah! No, this is not so cold-blooded, nor is it use. It is just an extension of education. It must be looked at separately. The principal does not know what will happen in the future, but he sees far and has his own guesses. He will guide his students based on these guesses. In other words, the principal pays more attention to the transformation of the students themselves, rather than forcing them to do something. This is difficult to explain. If this can help you understand better. The relationship between us and the goblins of Gringotts is called use, and it is mutual use. But the principal is not like this, otherwise he would not tolerate me at all and would have asked me to drop out of Hogwarts long ago. This can be regarded as one of the reasons why I respect him the most is why the more I talk about it, the more I feel like I am going back to Hogwarts to repeat my studies. I hope this is just my illusion. Ah! Harry Potter, this has nothing to do with us. At least not yet. The holidays are coming soon, and we have to find a way to publish the new textbook on the magic circle smoothly, but we can't leave the new students without books. Besides, even if in front of Principal Dumbledore, it's not like we don't have our own secrets. Aren't you hiding your ability to use a wand from him? Chapter 117. In the next few days, Harry met Dumbledore again, and the two had a conversation. After that, Harry shared the contents of the conversation with Ron and Hermione, who came to visit him. It's really dangerous. Ron sighed, but do you think there is something wrong with this whole thing? The principal first returned the invisibility cloak to you, and then taught you how to use the Mirror of Erised, and everything else? No way. Hermione said, if he is really like this, then I think the principal is more terrifying than Professor Highmore. I mean, Professor Highmore at least didn't want to kill you. No, that's not the case. Harry said thoughtfully, Dumbledore is a very interesting person. I feel that he seems to understand me very well, and it is for this reason that he teaches me a lot of extra things. He knew what decision I would make, but he didn't intend to stop me like Professor Highmore did. Instead, he had been helping me in a subtle way. He was giving me a chance, and while protecting me, he also believed that I had the right to make the decision. Do something on your own, which may include facing Voldemort in person. Ron quickly asked Harry to lower his voice. He still couldn't get used to hearing Voldemort's name casually. Hermione commented keenly, but when you say this, it seems that Dumbledore is much better than Professor Highmore. At least Professor Highmore will not let us make decisions completely freely. If we fail to complete the homework, there will be make the situation worse. Isn't this a matter of course? Ron said, after all, Dumbledore is the principal. Listen, Harry, you must come to the year-end banquet tomorrow. Of course, Slytherin won first place, but don't let this bad news affect your appetite. The food at the banquet is still delicious. The next day, after begging Madame Pomfrey for a while, Harry finally got permission to attend the year-end banquet. He went downstairs alone and rushed to the auditorium, which was already full of people. The Great Hall was decorated with the green and silver colors representing Slytherin to celebrate their 7th consecutive House Cup win. A huge banner with a Slytherin snake hung on the wall behind the guest of honor. As soon as Harry walked in, the Great Hall suddenly fell silent, and then everyone suddenly started talking loudly again. He walked to the Gryffindor table and sat between Ron and Hermione, pretending not to notice that people were standing. Get up and stare at him. Just get used to it as soon as possible. Hermione persuaded, this is how everyone treated me when I was first discharged from the hospital. Yet Ron was trying hard not to let his ears turn red. I'm about the same. This time I'm in your favor. Oh, come on. Harry said helplessly, I would rather never be treated specially, and I don't want anyone to stare at my forehead when they see me." Fortunately, Dumbledore arrived a moment later, and the noise in the auditorium gradually subsided. "Another year has passed," said Dumbledore cheerfully. "Before you enjoy these delicacies, I must trouble you all to listen to an old man's cliché. What a wonderful year it has been! In your little minds, it is definitely richer than before. There is a whole summer vacation waiting for you, which allows you to digest those things and clear your mind before the start of the next semester." He then told the scores of each house. Among them, Gryffindor was the lowest, far behind Hufflepuff, who was third. A thunderous cheer and stamping of feet erupted from the Slytherin table. "Yes, yes, good performance, Slytherin," Dumbledore said. "Now, let the party begin." Toby was still assigned to the position next to the principal. It was the first time he saw Snape's mouth raised so high, and it was also the first time he saw the atmosphere in Gryffindor House so gloomy. Even when he was in school. This has never happened. James and Sirius are very naughty, but they rarely involve their houses and try their best to avoid being deducted points. Toby picked up a piece of steak and put it on the plate, and said at the same time, "I thought you would reward Gryffindor at the end. Anyway, those children performed well. But I think your judgment is fair." Dumbledore said with a smile, "The most important thing is that I suddenly remembered that I did not send a gift to a student on Christmas, so I had to make up for it today. I hope the student who is more Slytherin than Slytherin can be satisfied. Welcome back." Toby deliberately turned his head, and across the long table, he looked at the proud Snape from a distance. "He is very satisfied, Principal," Toby said in an inaudible voice. "I was even a little touched." As if suddenly, the students' wardrobes were empty, their belongings were packed into their suitcases, and notices were sent to every student, warning them not to use magic during the holidays. Neville was very excited. After this holiday, he would have more time to spend with his parents. According to the content of the letter from Grandma, they were now able to wake up briefly and even communicate with others normally. The students left the castle and came to the Hogwarts Express station. Ron looked back and forth twice, and suddenly he poked Neville in the arm. "Didn't you want to invite Professor Highmore to go to St. Mungo's with you? Hospital? He is here now. Did you tell him in advance?" At the end of the student team, Professor Highmore was striding forward, and when he noticed that his students were taking the initiative to make way for them. Neville also saw this scene, and he shook his head in confusion. "No, Professor Highmore rejected me in advance. He said that he was busy with something, and he didn't know what it was, but why did he suddenly appear at the station?" "Hey! Hey!" Sharp-eyed Hermione waved to them quickly. "Look, Professor Highmore is walking towards the Slytherin students. It's Malfoy. He's actually coming for Malfoy." "Where is it?" Harry immediately perked up when he heard Malfoy's name. After seeing the shocked expression on Draco Malfoy's face, he couldn't help but gloated, "Wow, he's unlucky now. I was caught by Professor Highmore on the last day of vacation." "No. Why did Professor Highmore take Malfoy on the train with him? What was he going to do?" At this moment, Toby had already taken Draco and his two followers, Crabbe and Goyle, into the nearest box. The first thing that the passing students thought of after being surprised was to stay away from this place. A private box. They couldn't imagine what would happen on this journey. Crabbe and Goyle sat nervously on one side of the box. Draco sat on the opposite seat next to Professor Highmore. His heart was beating so fast that he was almost scared to death. Why is he so unlucky that he can't get rid of Professor Highmore's shadow even after the holidays? Al jumped down from Toby's shoulders. He took out a large bucket of BB's multi-flavor beans from his belly pocket and chewed them one by one. "Mr. Malfoy!" Toby, who was sitting by the window, suddenly spoke, startling Draco. "Teaching professor. You plan to take this train home, right?" "Yes, Professor." "Will your parents wait for you at the finish line?" "Yes, sir." "This means that Lucius Malfoy will also appear." Draco was speechless, he was so frightened. Toby finally turned to look at Malfoy, his long hair hanging down one by one at some point, blocking his blurry vision. Like a poisonous snake waiting for an opportunity to hide. "Don't worry, kid," Toby said calmly, "this is just a home visit. As my first home visit as a professor, you should be happy. Why are you crying?" Malfoy saw Mr. Owl gathering their owl cages together in a tight guard position. He was lucky that he didn't cry on the spot. He really couldn't laugh. The train carrying the new professor drove into the distance, carrying a deathly silence and despair. The name of an archaeologist alone could no longer make up for the power that spread from him, even if he added the best curse breaker in history. Not enough to fill it up. Toby looked at the scenery outside the window happily. From an angle that few people could see, a fine black smoke flashed through his pupils and slowly disappeared. He hummed softly to the melody of Funeral March. Hogwarts. Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hogwarts. Give us knowledge, but not from the devil. His real name is the Black Devil. Until people forget about him, no one will remember the past of the Black Devil. I forgot about my begging for mercy and my lack of strength. But the Black Devil never leaves. He is an invisible ghost. He is an invisible fear. No one can escape his vicious hand and no one can successfully evade it. Be lucky that he hasn't found you yet. This is the only good thing you have left. Remember, remember. This is a legend circulating in Hogwarts. The legend of Hogwarts far away. Chapter 118. Harry felt that his life was really terrible. Just last year, Harry would not have thought this way. He had become a wizard inexplicably, and finally had a chance to leave the Dursleys, come to Hogwarts, become a freshman in the school, and become a member of the wizarding world. In school, he met two good friends, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. And just at the end of the last semester, they also defeated the idea of with the help of Professor Heimer. For Voldemort to make a comeback, this is an extraordinary achievement. However, when he returned to the Dursleys again, everything was brought back to its original state. The Dursleys treated him very badly, which was not beyond Harry's expectation. He had long known that he would never have a good life here. But the only thing that puzzled Harry was why Ron and Hermione still refused to write to him during the holidays, and Neville Longbottom, who was also one of Harry's good friends, and obviously, before the holiday, he promised that once his parents recovered, he would definitely inform them of the news. Harry didn't understand why things turned out like this. He seemed to have been abandoned by the entire wizarding world all of a sudden. If Hedwig hadn't been there, Harry might have thought it was just a long dream. Many times, Harry would become aggrieved unconsciously. He really wanted to know what happened to Professor Heimer later. This is what makes Harry feel the most uncomfortable. He can't read newspapers from the wizarding world, and no one can contact him. Ever since the disaster happened at the train station during the holiday, Harry has been asking Ron back and forth. Hermione made sure to tell him the follow-up of the incident several times, and both of them agreed at the time, but why was there no news from them later? It wasn't until recently that Harry understood the reason. It was all because of a house elf named Dobby. Dobby seemed grateful to Harry for defeating Voldemort, which was nice. But when Dobby took out the letters from his friends that he had intercepted without permission, and warned Harry that he could not return to Hogwarts under any circumstances, things turned out badly. Dobby threw a large plate of pudding onto the floor, ruining a large order from Uncle Vernon. Later, the Ministry of Magic mistakenly thought it was Harry's magic, and the warning letter sent made Uncle Vernon finally understand. It turned out that this boy could not use magic casually during the holidays, and they had all been deceived by him. As a result, Harry was locked in his room, with iron bars on the windows and a trapdoor on the bedroom door. They sent a little food in 3 times a day. They let Harry out to use the toilet every morning and evening, and other things. He was locked in the house all the time. Even the bowl of soup Harry got tonight was cold. His stomach was already so hungry that it hurt. He quickly jumped out of bed, picked up the bowl, and drank half of it in one go. Then he walked to Hedwig's cage and poured out the vegetables soaked in water at the bottom of the bowl into its empty food plate. It ruffled its feathers and gave him a disgusted look. "Don't be so cocky, that's all we have," Harry said with a straight face. He put the empty bowl back by the trapdoor and lay down on the bed again, feeling hungrier than before the soup. Harry was now starting to worry about what he would do if he failed to report to Hogwarts. Will they send someone to investigate why he didn't go back? Can they get the Dursleys to let him go? Worrying that there was no answer, Harry fell asleep little by little until he heard a loud noise. He opened his eyes, the moonlight shone in through the window grill, and someone stared at him through the iron fence, a man with a freckle face, red hair, and a long nose. Ron Weasley was outside Harry's window. Taking all his luggage with him, Harry escaped from the Dursleys. Until now, Harry still couldn't believe what had happened. Now he was sitting in the magic car that Mr. Weasley had secretly modified, watching the roof of Privet Drive getting smaller below. Uncle Vernon, Petunia, Aunt and Dudley were still staring blankly at the window. "See you next summer," Harry shouted. The Weasley brothers laughed loudly, and they also came to accompany Ron. The whole thing happened because Ron had written 12 letters to Harry inviting him to his home, but he had not received any invitations. Reply. He later heard from Mr. Weasley that Harry had used magic in front of Muggles and had been warned. Mr. Weasley worked at the Ministry of Magic, so he could get this information. Because they were too worried about Harry, Ron and the twins secretly drove in Mr. Weasley's car to visit him. Sure enough, they were right, Harry caused a lot of trouble, but what surprised them most was that all these troubles were caused by a house elf. Harry released Hedwig from the cage and watched it fly happily in the air. The other 3 people were silently digesting the news. Harry said. Very suspicious, Fred finally said. It's obviously very strange, George agreed. He wouldn't even tell you who was behind this. I don't think he can say it. Harry said. I just said that every time he was about to say something, he would bang his head against the wall, but these are not important. Tell me what happened to Professor Hammer. What's going on? Has he been captured by the Ministry of Magic? Harry was almost dying of curiosity about this matter. After all, his nemesis Draco Malfoy was at the scene, and he really wanted to know the outcome. Oh, I remembered. Ron suddenly said, you don't know yet. Professor Heimer went abroad and has never come back. At first, there were people who wanted to arrest him, but then nothing happened. Already? How is that possible? Harry asked in shock. Did he threaten the Minister of Magic? We have been looking forward to this happening. Fred, who was driving, turned around and smiled, but Dad said this was all because the department couldn't find any clues at the scene, so naturally there was no way to suspect Heimer. The professor is on top. You are kidding me. The more Harry listened, the more wonderful he felt. He was really regretful that he had missed such an incredible thing. Everyone knew that it could only be Professor Hammer's hand, and we all saw the terrifying doll with our own eyes. How come there are no clues? That's the problem. George in the passenger seat laughed. The doll is missing, and it put all the blame on the mysterious man, and also blackmailed Lucius. This is. I'm punishing you for your betrayal. He finally imitated the weird doll and screamed, and then everyone in the car became happy. Seriously? Ron said admiringly, Professor Heimer is the truly capable person. However, everyone knows that it was him who did it, but no one can do anything about him. My father said that it was lucky to have Dumbledore. Leto looked at him, otherwise there's no telling what would have happened. It's a good thing we have a holiday, otherwise Professor Hamo might have locked us up for a long time just for secretly driving this car out. You say, it's Professor Hamo. All 4 people were startled. Next to the flying car, Professor Hamo, whom they had not seen for a long time, appeared out of thin air and was looking at them silently through the car window. Harry's mind was in chaos, and there was only one thought left in his heart. His life is really terrible. Chapter 119. In front of Professor Heimer, who suddenly appeared, the expressions on the 4 people's faces all froze, and even the magic car suddenly trembled. It obediently opened the door at the back, and the 4 of them watched Professor Heimer fly away from the prohibited items. He jumped in vigorously on the blanket and sat next to Harry and Ron, who didn't dare to move. Don't make a sound. Toby said abruptly, and pressed Al, who wanted to come out for a breath, back into his collar. His body gradually became lighter and eventually became completely transparent. Just pretend nothing happened. After leaving his last warning, Professor Heimer disappeared. Just when the 4 of them were confused, George, who was sitting in the front row, suddenly pointed to the rearview mirror and said in surprise, Merlin, look at it. Something flew out of the clouds in the night sky and slowly descended. Harry and Ron looked back with shock written on their faces. The monster had the head of a lion, the body of a goat and the tail of a fire dragon. It doesn't look easy to mess with. It's Chimramon. Fred, who was hesitating whether he should stop the magic car, explained, even though it looks scary, Chimeramon's strength is much more terrifying than its appearance, and like fire dragons, they are dangerous creatures of XXXXX level. And Professor Kettleben has always wanted to raise one, but he has never been able to do so. The last sentence is more convincing than anything else. Professor Kettleben is the professor of care of magical creatures at Hogwarts, and is also known as the enhanced version of Hagrid. He only has 1.5 limbs left. It is said that if Principal Dumbledore hadn't stopped him in time, the remaining limb would have disappeared long ago. The chimera shook its lion head, and its mouth was big enough to swallow a little wizard in one bite. At least Harry thought he would have no problem sleeping in it. The chimera beast was obviously heading for the magic car. It quickly flew to a height alongside the car, and the wiper on the front window automatically waved, as if surrendering in advance. At this time, a voice like the sound of nature came from the chimera beast, and a woman with long silver white hair leaned down, her brows furrowed, and her eyes kept scanning around the car. Have you ever seen this person? The woman is holding a group photo in her hand. The background of the photo is a collapsed building, which seems to be a temple or something. The woman, whose face has not changed much, is smiling at the camera. She is holding a stick in her hand and looking at it. The scepter looks ominous. It is black as a hole, and there are several shrunken skull heads hanging on the top. It looks dangerous no matter how it looks. Standing next to her was Professor Heimer, who looked much younger. At this time, he had grown his iconic long hair, and it was still hanging down in front of his eyes. Through his hair, Professor Heimer's eyes were. Several people were familiar with the evil intentions and were staring at the scepter. Compared to the vague Professor Heimer, Mr. Owl's intention is more obvious. It is standing on the top of the scepter. In the photo, it is quietly bending down, secretly standing on its head, and putting the scepter on its belly. In his pocket, and then in the next second, Mr. Owl stuffed the entire scepter in with a swish. Professor Heimer kicked the woman away without any gentlemanly demeanor, and the woman's face remained unchanged while she fell. With a fresh smile on her face, she fell down hard on her face. When she looked up in disbelief, the picture of the photo was getting further and further away from her as the two men who took away the scepter. It seemed that even the camera was taken away by them until the woman turned into a blur. There are no blurry black spots, and the picture of the photo changes back to the beginning. However, such exciting content could not attract the four immature little wizards at all. They were all shocked by the woman's astonishing beauty, and their minds became more and more confused. Even the car's windshield wipers froze and stopped moving. Neither the chime Ramon, who was staring at them with its head tilted, nor the scene in the photo that started to play back again, could drive away the woman in front of them, until I said. The woman finally became impatient. Have you seen this man before? Just answer yes or no. Fred and George nodded subconsciously, and only Harry and Ron, who finally saw the photo clearly, shook their heads. Hey! The woman's voice became unpleasant, and a low growl came from the chimera beast's throat. This time, even the twins began to shake their heads, and cold sweat quietly slid down their necks. The woman didn't seem to want to waste any more time here. She took one last look at the empty space inside the car, but the reality was completely different from what she thought. The seats inside the car had been casted with a traceless spell, and it was impossible to see out of the car window. There was no empty space next to Harry and Ron. The woman rode the chimera and flew away, gradually turning into a black dot in the night sky, just like herself at the end of the photo. This direction. Is she going to Hogwarts? Professor Heimer finally came out of invisibility. He kept rubbing his chin. Al popped his head out of his collar and babbled softly twice. It doesn't matter. The principal should be able to handle Angela. Just treat it as a daily communication between Hogwarts and Wagadu. Angela. Ron blinked. Wagadu. At this moment, he couldn't tolerate being silent. Do you know that woman, Professor? Yes. Toby took out his wand and set up protective spells one after another around the car, as if to prevent the other party from suddenly making a counterattack. As you can see, she came to me for revenge. As for revenge, is there a reason? I believe you can also find the reason from the photo just now. The atmosphere in the car suddenly became a little weird. The reason? Aren't you working with Al to bully a beautiful girl? Really abominable. They subconsciously sided with Angela and completely ignored the cameraman, who was not easy to mess with. And Toby seemed to have misunderstood the changes in their expressions. Don't look at me like that, kids. It's not like I haven't thought about finding an opportunity to teach her a lesson, but some people are different, so to speak. Because he doesn't have a long memory, he's not as good as Lucius Ahem, he's not as worry-free as some people. The atmosphere suddenly became even weirder. Harry and Ron exchanged a look. They didn't know whether Professor Heimer was threatening them with Lucius's matter. If he could teach a board member a lesson without getting hurt, he would surely be able to deal with a few of them more easily. At this moment, Fred suddenly felt a hard tap on his shoulder. Teaching professor. Are you of age? Do you have a driver's license? I mean a Muggle driver's license. No, none, Professor. Then what car are you driving? Fred felt an earth-shaking feeling. When he came to his senses again, he found that he was already sitting in the back seat of the car, and George appeared next to him with a confused look on his face. Toby sat in the driver's seat and held the steering wheel. Al jumped out of the collar of his witch robe, sat in the passenger seat next to him, and fastened his seat belt honestly. "Let me think about it, I haven't had to travel in such an old way for a long time. To be honest, I still like Muggle cars. Of course, it would be better if there are planes. What is this button?" With the four people looking in horror, Toby pressed his finger on a button with a suspicious color. The next second, several streaks of flames spurted out from the rear of the car and swept straight out. All four people were pinned to the backs of their seats, their eyes widening wider than the last. "Wow!" they heard Professor Heimer excitedly say, "the speed is good, huh? Let me try this button again, by the way. You haven't told me how you ended up here in the middle of the night." Chapter 120. Is it still here? Harry thought sadly. Sure enough, no matter what, Professor Heimer would never let them go easily, even if it was just a holiday. Just as Harry was hesitating to tell the truth, the twin brothers had already begun to loudly accuse the Dursleys of their evil deeds. No food to eat. Sleeping in a storage room without even a decent room. Hungry him. Being locked up is just like going to jail. There was only a bowl of cold canned soup for dinner. The textbooks are also locked up, and he can't even do his summer homework. Suddenly, the magic car stopped suddenly in the air, and all four people in the back row hit their heads on the front seats. Under Toby's control, the car slowly turned around and drove along the way it came. Harry was already frightened. "Don't! Professor! Don't send me back! You can put me in solitary confinement as many times as you want. Don't! No, Mr. Potter!" Even though he could only see the professor's back, Harry couldn't help but shudder at the other person's tone. "Tell me what you have experienced over the years, the more detailed the better." Harry didn't dare not answer. Even though he tried to make those things as calm as possible, he could still feel that Professor Heimer's aura was becoming more and more terrifying. Especially Mr. Al, it couldn't wait to take it. He took out a small silver shovel and looked like he was about to go to the battlefield. At this time, even the other three people noticed that something was wrong with the atmosphere. Ron glared at the twins angrily, and Fred whispered, "We didn't lie. But what you said is going too far." Ron scolded in a low voice, "Listen, I don't like the Dursleys either, but you have to take your time. What should I do if I irritate Professor Heimer? Then I can only hope that they can withstand beatings better than Malfoy." George said indifferently, "If you have seen their size clearly before, you will know that it is a piece of cake for them." Despite this, George still felt a little guilty. Like the other three people, he couldn't help but guess how Professor Heimer would deal with the Dursleys. In the silence, Harry heard Professor Heimer suddenly ask another question. "Mr. Potter, after so many years, have you never thought that someone would take you away? No matter who it is." "No, sir." "Yeah, I know." Toby never imagined that Harry would be so miserable. He knew that Dumbledore paid special attention to this boy, but when Harry said that he had never been taken away by anyone, Toby understood that this matter was not as simple as he thought. There is no doubt that it is because of love. Toby didn't like to study the too innocent and beautiful magic of love, but he at least understood what was going on. The love to protect Harry spread from Lily to her blood relative, Petunia. In this way, Toby can understand why Dumbledore was indifferent, because he was too careful to break any status quo, lest Petunia expel Harry. Unless it is a critical moment, Dumbledore will not take risks, because it is very likely to be related to Harry's life. Toby knows that this is not alarmist. Many Death Eaters suddenly became more serious after Voldemort failed. Crazy, most casualties also occurred at that stage. For example, Neville's parents were captured and tortured by Death Eaters after Voldemort disappeared, with the intention of extracting Voldemort's whereabouts from them. Toby knew that there were some methods that Dumbledore was unwilling to do anyway. However, Toby himself is not such a careful person. Moreover, compared to Snape, Toby and James had no grudges, and they would not attach so-called resentment to Harry. Naturally, they did not want to see Lily's children suffer such abuse. In that small group, there was another person he really hated, a person who hated Slytherin deeply. Also a prisoner of Azkaban. Under Harry's fearful command, the magic car quickly landed in front of the house on Privet Drive. Uncle Vernon, who heard the movement, walked out of the house yelling, holding a baseball bat in his hand, obviously listening to. There was the familiar sound of a car starting, intending to teach Harry a lesson when he came back. But as soon as he pushed open the door of the house, the baseball bat flew out of his hand, passed over Petunia's frightened face, rubbed the nose of Dudley, who was about to come out to watch the fun, and finally embedded itself hard into the wall. "Who are you?" Uncle Vernon had the courage to question Toby, who was coming out of the car. Several people in the car were also shocked. They didn't expect Professor Heimer's attack to be so straightforward. "I'm someone you never want to mess with." Toby walked towards him step by step, and Vernon suddenly found that his body moved backwards uncontrollably, until he gave way to the door. After Toby entered the house, the door suddenly closed behind him. He walked to the living room as if there was no one around and looked at the decorations inside. Dudley screamed loudly when he saw the weird-looking sniff. "Don't make any noise." Toby waved his wand and Dudley's mouth immediately disappeared. Then he turned around and stared coldly at the other person, Penny. Petunia was so frightened that she completely panicked. She looked over Vernon's strong shoulders, her eyes widened little by little, and said in disbelief, "It's you. Tobyheimer. That devil. It seems Lily has already introduced herself to me." Toby said slowly, "Fortunately, you still remember what happened when you were a child, so you should also know who owes your survival to this day." Petunia's face turned red with anger, but she held on to Vernon's arm tightly, not daring to let him rush forward. "Very good," Toby said indifferently, "as long as you know the lesson. Unfortunately, I just heard about what happened to Harry Potter here. You are jealous of Lily's talent, so I completely understand you. But you should also know that you can never do this again in the future. Just like you never dare to embarrass Lily again. Remember what you have learned, remember this." After saying these words, Toby waved his wand casually. Al stared at them fiercely and split the sofa in the living room into two halves with a small shovel. Accompanied by Dudley's non-stop crying, Toby walked out of the house. He sat back in the magic car and glanced at the four students through the rear-view mirror. They all heard the noise coming from the house, and couldn't come back to his senses for a moment. Fred remembered the report from last semester, and he boldly asked, "Did you deal with those dark wizards like this before during archaeology?" "Not that simple." Toby started the car and controlled the car to fly into the air. "If you are dealing with a dark wizard, you can't just pretend.